Was hast du dann?
Hello. Hello.
Good afternoon, Dr. Zatari.
كيفكم اليوم؟
We are great.
نشاط قوي.
Yes, أكيد.
As usual.
As usual.
الله يخلي لي إياكم.
الله يخلينا إياك. Doctor, we have people who are joining, but I think we can wait a little bit till 3.
لا ثلاثة. No.
Yes,
One time.
yes.
One at the time. I'll بلش أنا. I will introduce the moderator and turn it over to him. For a while I got worried لأنه بعت المسج الصبح بس.
Yes, he is with us, Dr. Saloom Kamal.
Yeah.
Hello, we're just waiting on the speakers.
Okay, great. I'm available. At 3 we'll start. يعني right on the minute.
On time.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon.
Hello, Doctor.
Hi, Dr. Zatari.
كيفك يا رمزي؟ شغلت لنا بالنا.
لا ولا يهمك.
هذا ايام هيتوا على مجالكم راسكم.
ايه يعني عادي بفلوريدا كل سنه.
هذا كله هذا موسم معودين عليه انتم.
Exactly. احنا هون بجينزفيل يعني مش معرضين كثير لانه مش حد البحر.
It died down ولا بعدها still it's building up?
لا it's building up. بعد ما وصل يعني it didn't make landfall.
So you have to evacuate ولا just like take precautions?
لا take precautions. احنا مش we're not in a flood zone.
Okay.
فهلا ناطرينه المفروض يوصل بعد الظهر لقيته.
طيب good. يعني نحن we always pray for your safety and your community لأنه بعرفهم هون يعني I've been there and I know how ugly they can be and devastating.
Yeah, exactly. بس واحد يقعد بيته يعني.
لا منه مسحة. لا you have to take precautions لأنه ما بتعرف كيف. يعني I've seen neighborhood كنت بتكساس بعدني هذيك الأيام. We had a tornado storm. يا رب يعني we were lucky our neighborhood was spared. بس the one next to us مش معقول يعني. I'm sure you have seen like this. أجا ما حيوم محي ما بقي شيء من البيوت مثل المطحنين طحن.
ايه I've seen them. هو التورنيدو بيخوف اكثر لانه you can't predict it. الهوريكان تعرف انه جاي بس الهوريكان بيولد تورنيدوز اوقات.
Exactly يعني ما بتعرفوا where it hits and how it lands.
Yeah. هو اكثر شيء عنا بخوف الشجر
Yeah.
بس تيوقع على شجر.
لأنه the speed of the wind is just unbelievable.
Yeah. بلش هلا شوي على الخفيف.
أنت كيفك وشغلك كله منيح على ذوقك؟
الحمد لله كثير كله ماشي الحمد لله. So هلا when after you do the introductions I'm
what I will do is I'll just like do a short wrap up few minutes مش أكتر يعني and then I will introduce you and you will take over presenting the speakers. You don't have to be detailed on them, you know, with the syllabus there is the information about each speaker. You can use that to introduce the speaker. And then obviously as a moderator I know you have been you're not new to this business. You can just نحن حنطلب منه نحطوا أسئلة على ال Q&A box or field and obviously with your background and knowledge you can always direct questions. You can ask questions and see how things would go. I've divided them into two parts this afternoon, so this way we'll have a not to keep everybody busy for too long. So yesterday it went very well. Mark, if you're able to attend any of these, but it went very well. It was relatively well attended. We had about up to 92 attendees. Who speakers were very good presentations. So and today we have another good program. So it was well received يعني. So hopefully and we try to stay on time. كمان يعني إذا لقيت واحد speaker هيك عم يشط feel free to put them back in line.
Give them a warning. Okay.
Or something and you can send them a message although يمكن ما حيشوفوها. But feel free to say please try to wrap up if need be يعني. إجمالا yesterday only with one speaker but otherwise all of them were sticking to their time allotment. كمان يعني امبارح في محلات كانت محشورة ما كان في مجال for open. في محلات there was this open Q&A. في محلات they were just squeezed. So I always like the Q&A لأنه it generates هيك شوي في أشياء at some points can be raised in a Q&A that could be valuable to everybody rather than restricting it to the to the person who's asking and the speaker. They have this flexibility with the Q&A. When you respond, you can be targeted, but it's good if there is time to allow Q&A, part of the presentation, and even for a few minutes, it will be useful, or even for you as a moderator to comment on things. And you are an experienced person who can make some valuable comments.
Thank you. Looks like people are joining.
Yeah, so we'll, and then I will start at 3 sharp. Hello, everyone. Good day to all of you, spread all over the world. And I would like to thank those who join us again for day 2 of this Congress. And also welcome the individuals who are joining us for the first time today. Yesterday, we had for day 1 a very fruitful day. We had very valuable and informative presentations that covered first to tell us about the trends in water pipe use, and obviously it continues to be alarming, particularly in certain regions, and also certain factors that play into the increased use in some areas and regions of WHO. We've also had some good discussions on the relationship of COVID and the risk of COVID on the smokers of water pipe and the risk that it would entail with the increase of severity of disease. And this is applicable to the use of all tobacco products. And then we had a very informative discussion on the flavorings. And this is something that has related to the Waterpipe tobacco product itself. That's very crucial to make them very attractive products, and as all of you are aware. And there were some suggestions as how to go about regulating and learning from the experience in the EU. Today, the focus of our presentations are going to be on advancing, pushing forward the understanding of the contents of the Waterpipe tobacco products. We have discussed in previous congresses the toxins and the carcinogens that are present within the contents, as well as the emissions of the Waterpipe smoke. And luckily, there has been attempts at trying to standardize the testing for some of these contents. And TobLabNet has taken a major initiative in doing so, so we'll be hearing more about that. And then some of the discussions will be focusing on factors that had to do with the demand for the use of these products and what measures can be taken to reduce such demand. And we will start by the end of the day, the discussions on the taxation, a very crucial point in tobacco control. And this is also true in application to the Waterpipe tobacco smoking. With that brief introduction, I would like to turn over the podium to my friend and colleague, Dr. Ramzi Saloom, who will be moderating the next session. Dr. Ramzi Saloom is an associate professor in the Department of Health Outcomes and Biomedical Informatics at the University of Florida College of Medicine. And he's also the director of the Dissemination and Implementation Science Core at the University of Florida Clinical and Translational Center or Institute. He had his PhD in economics from Wayne State University and has done some postdoc training in public health at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. His field of study has been tobacco control and cancer prevention and control. His work in the field of Waterpipe is well noted and highly regarded. And he has worked on the economic implications of the dissemination and implementation of tobacco control, as well as other cancer interventions. He currently serves as co-chair of the Society for Research on Nicotine and Tobacco Global Research Network, in addition to his multiple other responsibilities. It's a great pleasure for us to have today Ramzi with us, both as a moderator and later on in this afternoon or today as a speaker. So Ramzi, I'll turn it over to you, and thanks again for joining us, knowing very well that he was in the midst of a Ian storm in Florida, so we're very fortunate that he managed to be with us for today. Ramzi.
Thank you, Dr. Zaatari, for the kind introduction, and welcome everyone to day 2 of this conference. Yeah, I'll mention that we are expecting a hurricane here in Florida today. So if there's any connection problems, I apologize in advance. It's not expected until later in the day, so we should be fine. But it's both my pleasure and an honor to be moderating the session this morning. I won't take too long. I'll go ahead and jump right in, but I want to emphasize the importance of the topics that will be discussed today. Especially we have experts presenting on health warning and contents of Waterpipe tobacco products and labeling of these contents, as well as effectiveness of health warnings, specifically in Waterpipe tobacco research. These topics are key elements of the Framework Convention on Tobacco Control, Article 11. Specifically has recommendations for how to implement health warnings. Later on in the day, we'll also hear from experts on the economics of Waterpipe tobacco control. So please stay with us for that session. And that's also something that is aligned with Article 6 of the Framework Convention of Tobacco Control, with specific recommendations on taxation. So without further ado, we are going to hear a recorded talk for our first bit this morning from Dr. Che and Dr. Chen Wan Ping is the Director for Pharmaceutical, Cosmetics, and Cigarette Testing Laboratories at Singapore's Health Sciences Authority and Chair of the World Health Organization Tobacco Laboratory Network, TOBLAB-NET. She has more than 20 years of experience in the field of analytic chemistry, dealing with regulatory compliance testing on tobacco products. Dr. Che led various key WHO projects, in particular on the development of standard analytical methods to measure the content and emission of tobacco products, including waterpipe tobacco. So we'll transition to the recorded talk from Dr. Che.
Good day to everyone. First of all, I would like to thank Ghazi and the organizing team for giving me this opportunity to share on WHO Tobacco Laboratory Network, on the work we do on tobacco products, including waterpipe tobacco, who we are, the network activities, what we have accomplished, and what's next, with the focus on waterpipe tobacco. Let me start by giving you a brief overview of WHO Tobacco Laboratory Network. The WHO Tobacco Laboratory Network, in short TOBLAB-NET, is a global tobacco testing laboratory network established by the WHO Tobacco Free Initiative in 2005. The main objective of the network is to build and strengthen tobacco product testing and research capacity in pursuance of Articles 9 and 10 of the WHO Framework Convention on Tobacco Control. The network, under the leadership of WHO TFI, of course, develops and validates methods and standard operating procedures for testing the contents and emissions of nicotine and tobacco products. TOBLAB-NET SOPs are part of WHO Global Goods, which means public health goods developed or undertaken by WHO that are of benefits either globally or to multiple countries across multiple regions. The SOPs provide technical guidance and tools to member states to strengthen and advance nicotine and tobacco product regulation. Members of the TOBLAB-NET includes academia, research agencies, government, and other laboratories independent of the tobacco industry, and WHO. To date, TOBLAB-NET has published a total of 14 SOPs for testing the contents and emissions of nicotine, shortlisted toxicants in tobacco products, and electronic nicotine delivery systems. The establishment of the 14 SOPs is a successful outcome, despite the many challenges that we face, and was made possible through intense commitment and excellent collaborations among the labs from different WHO regions. We are very pleased to know that more member states are now using TOBLAB-NET methods to collect tobacco product information for various purposes, to support their tobacco control initiatives, and also in their research settings. The SOPs are important tools as it operationalizes TOBREC's recommendations to support the implementation of Articles 9 and 10 of the WHO FCTC. In 2014, at COP6, WHO was requested to assess the applicability of methods to waterpipe tobacco. The assessment was completed in 2016 and was updated at COP7, and the report also was published in the 6th report of WHO Study Group on Tobacco Product Regulation in 2017. At COP7, WHO was further requested to finalize the SOPs for measuring tobacco-specific nitrosamines in waterpipe tobacco. Going back to the assessment report published in 2017, which I mentioned earlier, which was prepared by subject matter experts, some of them are presenters here as well in this workshop. The assessment covers the puffing topography, smoking methods, and various types of consumable that is commonly used, such as the head, hose, filter, and heat sources. The report provided 5 recommendations to regulators and 2 for researchers, with the highlight of the recommendations suggesting the possibility of adapting existing top-lab-net method to waterpipe tobacco. With the recommendation, top-lab-net has embarked on the waterpipe method development project. For this waterpipe project, the network encounters some challenges. One of the challenges encountered is resource limitation, especially in the testing of tobacco-specific nitrosamines, where the standards and equipment used are relatively costly, as it uses advanced instrumentation. Secondly, it was not so easy to recruit labs to participate, especially in waterpipe tobacco testing, where the prevalence is region-specific. For this, I would like to take the opportunity to invite experts and labs from this meeting, or to whom you may know, to join us in our quest to develop testing method for waterpipe and participate in the network activities. The third challenges we encounter is on logistics, where cross-border transportation of tobacco products are subjected to customs procedures. This slide provides an overview of the status of method validation on waterpipe tobacco. Despite the challenges in lab recruitment, the network continued to pursue this work, and thankfully, the National Institute of Public Health in the Netherlands has kindly offered to take the lead for the work on tobacco-specific nitrosamines in waterpipe tobacco. The preliminary work has just commenced, and we have confidence that this work will progress as planned, and hopefully it will be completed in third quarter of year 2023. Besides tobacco-specific nitrosamines, the network is also actively working to develop methods on flavor in tobacco products, due to the strong interest from member states to regulate flavors. The preliminary work has been commenced, with activities planned for the coming period. This slide shares a summarized overview on the use of scientific data to support nicotine and tobacco product regulation, and how it can be useful tools to build intelligence. Besides knowing how harmful the product is, which in itself is already harmful without testing, scientific data enables the authority to monitor level of addictiveness with regards to nicotine. And for additives such as flavor, it is a useful indicator to find out user demographics and the correlation to initiation. And last but not least, scientific data can be used as a public education tools to raise awareness through social media platform. It is important to note that without testing, very toxic products will remain or get dumped to the market. That's basically what I have to share on top-lab-net and on our work on waterpipe tobacco to date. I'm also pleased to share that this year there will be a 7th plenary top-lab-net meeting planned for December 2022, and it will be hosted in my country, in Singapore. WHO will be sharing more information on this meeting in the coming weeks. I wish you a very successful session ahead at this 4th Conference on Waterpipe Tobacco Workshop. Thank you for your attention, and this is the end of my presentation. Goodbye.
All right, so we'd like to thank Dr. Che for her informative presentation. And since this is a recorded presentation, I'm guessing she's not available to answer questions, but we will offer the opportunity for anyone to make any comments, or if there are any experts on this topic to also jump in and address any questions or comments. So anyone have any comments before we transition in the program?
Ramzi, I would like to maybe step in and say that the work of TOBLabNet has been a very laborious process, and it has taken a lot of time. Some of the people here in attendance may wonder why would it take that long to generate a standard operating procedure, that is the SOP. Because this will, as Noam Ping stated, WHO was interested in creating independence of the tobacco industry. The testing for tobacco products has been primarily dominated by the tobacco industry. So it was deemed necessary to establish a network that would be independent of that and be basically by public health and academicians rather than being totally under the control of the tobacco industry. So for those of you who are lab oriented, you realize that it takes a lot of time and effort to standardize the procedure, not only within one country, but across different labs across the globe, because again, this is a global organization and they would like to standardize it across the globe for all tobacco products. So that's why the work on the water pipe has been lagging behind the work on the cigarettes. But this is very important work. And the recommendations from the study group on tobacco product regulation has focused the attention at the moment on testing the contents of the tobacco product itself. And the next step will be moving into the emissions, that is the smoke that comes out. So that's the focus of the work right now, is on the nicotine, which can be easily measured, but also on the nitrosamines, and at the same time, the heavy metals and other compounds in the tobacco products before moving into the emissions. And that's why you may wonder why this is taking time, because again, you need to identify labs. Unfortunately, we don't have too many labs in our region that are taking part in this, but this is something that I would invite those who are interested, who might be joining us for this Congress, to come forward if there's an interest on their part or their organizations or their affiliate, be it at universities or public health labs, to take part in this. So this is my comment. Thank you, Ramzi.
Thank you, Dr. Zaatari, for providing this context for TOBLabNet. Certainly foundational work, and the chat is open. If anyone has comments or questions, we'd love to hear from you. I'm not seeing anything come in, or perhaps there is a question. We have a question from Dr. Ahmed. Are there any studies to compare the amount of nicotine in one session of water pipe with assuming the amount of nicotine in cigarette smoking? So I don't know if Dr. Zaatari or anyone else would like to comment on or address Dr. Ahmed's question.
The work on this has been completed by more than one author, and Dr. Alain Shahadi, who is here at the American University of Beirut, has been among the pioneers in looking at this. It is estimated that if you smoke a 10-gram of water pipe session, that will span over somewhat like a period of 45 minutes, the smoker will be exposed on average to about 2.2 milligrams of nicotine. So this is the amount of, and again, I'm talking about here in the specific conditions about flavored tobacco, not the traditional. So there's a variation. You cannot just simply talk in the comparison, but it depends on the type of tobacco you're smoking. In some of the non-flavored tobacco products, especially if they're using the sun-dried tobacco that is famously in our part of the world, the amount can be higher. This is compared to an average in the cigarette. Again, not all cigarettes produce the same amount of nicotine, but on an average, smoking a cigarette rod will generate somewhere between 1 to 1.5 milligrams of nicotine. Some of them may go up to 2, but in general, the average is somewhere between 1 to 1.5 milligrams. the danger with the water pipe smoking is basically the amount of toxins that are generated by the charcoal itself, which outweigh the amount of these toxicants in comparison to those of a cigarette. Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Zaatari, for this wonderful summary of the research on testing the nicotine in water pipe and in comparison to content in cigarettes. So looks like we have another question from Larissa or from Jordan. I would like to ask about the flavors. Are there any specifications on what is allowed? Food grade flavors have the GRAS status from the FDA for ingestion, not inhalation, and different combinations could cause different chemical reactions. Really good question here about regulations for flavors, specifically in water pipe tobacco.
Larissa, I don't know if you were with us yesterday. Dr. Rijsky Telhout from the RIVM from the Netherlands, she made a very detailed presentations on flavors and flavorings in water pipe tobacco. And she explained all these, and she's right now conducting a study looking specifically at water pipe. The interest of the group there has been primarily focused on the e-liquid, but they're extending their work now to water pipe, and she shared that information with us yesterday. She answered some of the part of the question that you are posing. If we get her permission, we can be happy to share that information with you. She has detailed all the chemicals that are present in the water pipe tobacco products. And also how, as you alluded to, that the combination may have even an exaggerated effect. So, but at the same time, there are no recommendations. The EU directive has basically banned using all characterizing flavors. That is much of the flavorings that we encounter in our markets. That is especially for the flavored tobacco, المعسل يعني التفاح والعنب والى آخره. So this is why yes, there are some countries which have taken this decision on banning them, but at the same time, and there are specific, because the group at RIVM has generated what we call the flavoring wheel, which has divided all the kind of flavorings that you can imagine of under this kind of a concise table that would allow regulators to use some of them in a particular way. So yes, there is some information that can help us for those who are interested in applying this to water pipe to tobacco products.
Thank you, Dr. Zaatari, again for sharing your insights, in particular about regulations on flavoring and water pipe tobacco. I don't see any additional questions from the audience, so we're going to transition to our next speaker today. We have Dr. Talib Usfad, and before I introduce Dr. Usfad, I'd like to reflect back on the first International Waterpipe Tobacco Smoking Conference, where we discussed the importance of health warnings and the recommendations from the FCTC in general about the effectiveness of health warnings in tobacco control. At the time, we did not have much work that was specifically tailored to water pipe tobacco and the effectiveness of health warnings on water pipe tobacco. Today, we have two speakers who are going to be sharing their work in this area specifically. So it's really exciting to see the progress that has been done in this field. And so I'll go ahead and introduce Dr. Usfad and give her the floor. So Dr. Usfad is a friend and colleague, and also in Florida. She's the associate professor at the Department of Public Health Sciences at the University of Miami, Miller School of Medicine, and a full member of the Sylvester Comprehensive Cancer Center at the University of Miami. Her research focus has been on preventing emerging tobacco products, including electronic cigarettes and Waterpipe, among youth and young adults by advancing health risk communication strategies. As part of these efforts, Dr. Usfad is currently leading 3 national and international innovative research projects aimed to develop and test pictorial health warnings for Waterpipe and electronic cigarettes with a focus on young adults. A secondary line of her research includes improving smoking cessation treatment among high-risk populations, including low-income adults, ethnic minorities, and cancer survivors. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce Dr. Usfad today.
Thank you very much, Ramzi. Hello, everyone from Miami. I just want to let you know that we are waiting for Hurricane Ian. I hope that my internet connection will stay good during the presentation. I will go ahead and share my presentation to. So today I'm going to present the Hookah and e-cigarette communication group work. So our group was established in 2017 with the main collaborator, Dr. Wasim Zayek from Florida International University and myself from the University of Miami. And we are funded, by 3 main grants. The first one was NIH Fogarty International, and it aims to develop and test health warning labels specific for Waterpipe in the Middle East, including 2 countries, Lebanon and Tunisia. The second grant was an extension to our work in the Middle East to the US, where we are trying to do the same, but here in Florida. And this grant was funded by James and Esther King and the Florida Department of Health. The third grant, which just get funded last year, and it's related to electronic cigarette. So we want to do the same, but for electronic cigarette, developing health warning labels for electronic cigarettes. And I want to acknowledge our collaboration, our collaborators in this group, including Dr. Rimana Ash from AUB, Dr. Habiba Ben Ramadan from Tunis, and we have Dr. Valon from the Truth Initiative here in the US, and we have Dr. Thomas Eisenberg from Florida, from Virginia Commonwealth, and we have Dr. Nawar Thes from University of North Carolina, and he's a specialist in health communication. And we have Dr. Michael Schmidt, who is our graphic health designer from the University of Memphis. And we are also collaborating with Golin. Golin is a company, social media company, and they are basically trying to help us in promoting the health warning labels that we are working on. And of course, in terms of dissemination as well. So Waterpipe, we all agree, like the use of Waterpipe is increasing globally, right? So the prevalence of Waterpipe smoking is estimated between 2 to 37 in the Middle East, 2 to 22% in the EU, and 1 to 11% in the US. And we also all agree that hookah smoking is associated with nicotine addiction, lung cancer, heart disease, respiratory disease, and periodontal disease. So health warning labels represent a very important strategy for tobacco control, mainly because it works as a source for information every time this product is in use. And we have strong evidence telling us that it's effective in encouraging users to quit. And it's also effective in prevention, like preventing new user from starting the habit. So it works on cessation and prevention at the same time. And we also have strong evidence that pictorial health warning labels, which is pictures plus text, is way more effective than text-only labels. And we know also that increasing the health warning size will improve their effectiveness. So FCTC Article 11, I did my search yesterday, but I wasn't able to find very detailed information. I wanted to know where are we in terms of implementing this policy. But I think the whole picture just telling us that we are still very much behind in terms of implementing first water pipe specific health warning labels and second pictorial health warning labels. So most of the countries that ratified the FCTC still implementing mostly on either text-only labels or pictorials labels that are adapted, that are used for cigarette. So we don't have like specific water pipe health warning labels. And here in the US, just recently in 2019, the FDA implemented a text-only labels for water pipe tobacco only also. And it said, warning, this product contains nicotine. Nicotine is addictive chemicals. So this is where we started. And we thought that, okay, we need to adapt this policy to water pipe. And this adaptation involve three main factors that we need to consider. The first one, we need to consider the water pipe unique multi-component context. So water pipe is different from cigarette. Cigarette, it's only the smokers is exposed only to the package. So if we have the health warning on the package, every cigarette smokers will be exposed to the package. But the case, it's not the same for water pipe. So water pipe involves the device, the charcoal, and the tobacco at the same time. And users who smoke water pipe in the cafe, which are the majority, they will be exposed only to the device. So this is where we considered, like, if we want to implement health warning labels policy for water pipe, we should put the warning on all the water pipe components, including the device and the charcoal and the tobacco and even the menu in the cafe. The second factor for the adaptation include the users, right? The population, the target population that we are targeting. We cannot just translate some health warning label that is being used in the US or in EU to the Middle East. And there is a lot of cultural factors that we need to consider in the adaptation, including mainly the language, that it should be match the population. And of course, other factors such as emotional reaction to the picture, to the warning, to the health information is different by the population. So this is another factor that we should consider in adapting the health warning labels. The third factor is the local tobacco control policy, situation, and environment in the country where we are trying to implement this policy. We need to know who are the policy players, who are our partners, and who are our advocacy. So these three factors are very important to adapt and implement the policy. So this is what we started to do. We did a proof of concept, small lab study where we brought 60 water pipe smokers here in the US. And this has been done in Dr. Maziak's lab. And they attended 2 sessions. In one session, they smoked the water pipe with the health warning on the device, as you can see on the picture. And in the second session, they smoked the water pipe without the labels. And we measured several subjective and objective measures, such as their satisfaction with the session, with the smoking. And we also measured CO, their exposure to carbon monoxide, and the difference between the two groups. And the results were very encouraging and showing that implementing or implementing the health warning label on the device will make difference for water pipe smokers. So we found a significant difference between the labels and no labels, which was our control group, in terms of satisfaction. So the smokers were less satisfied with their smoking session when they attended the session with the health warning labels. We also found a significant difference in exposure to carbon monoxide. So smokers, when smokers smoke the water pipe with the health warning labels, there was a reduction, a significant reduction in CO exposure. So this is our plan, and it includes step 1. And please be patient because we have a lot of steps. I tried in this presentation my best to show you like how we walked step by step to reach our goal. So for step 1, our main objective was to develop and optimize 24 water pipe specific health warning labels. And this step included 3 phases. In the first phase, we developed the labels. Basically, we tried to identify the priority themes for the label and develop the content and finalize the design. In the second phase, we did focus group study to adapt these labels to the users or non-users, basically to our target population. And in the third phase, we tried to, based on the results from the focus group, to improve further our 24 label and make them available for health communication internationally. So we have an English version and an Arabic version. And actually we have two different Arabic versions. One was designed for Tunisia and the other one is for Lebanon. We also wanted to be sure that we are relying on evidence-based. We didn't want to create health warning labels that are not backed with strong evidence. And that's why we did a systematic review for evidence about the health effect of water pipe to be sure like where we can really improve information about the health risk of water pipe. And based on this, we found strong evidence about the association of water pipe with lung and oral cancer, cardiovascular disease, respiratory disease, periodontal disease, and candida and skin disease. And based on this health risk, our group decided on 4 main themes for the labels. The first theme is related to the health risk associated with water pipe smoking and addiction. The second one is the harm to others. So basically the harmful effect of water pipe among those who are secondhand exposed to water pipe smoking. And we identify a theme for water pipe specific harms. And this was mainly related to using the charcoal to heat the tobacco in the water pipe that expose users to extra carcinogen and toxins, and also related to the habit of sharing water pipe between users, which has the potential to spread infectious disease. The fourth theme was water pipe harm compared to cigarettes. And there was some overlap between theme 1 and theme 4, sorry. But we wanted to correct the misperception among users that water pipe is really less harmful than cigarettes. So we want users to be exposed to like cigarette, water pipe can do this and this. So this was the main aim for having theme 4. And this is some consideration when we started in developing the labels. So we have the labels and we allocated 1/3 of the size for the text and 2/3 for the picture, because the picture is more effective in grabbing attention for among people. And so the text, we will put what we can say, and in the picture, what we can show, right? And then we try to develop the text that should be small, should be short and effective. And we chose the color just to be also basically grabbing attention of users. And this is an example for the 4 themes, like theme 1 is health risk. We have chemicals in hookah smoke can cause oral cancer. Theme 2, harm to others. Hookah smoke can harm your children. Theme 3, water pipe specific harm. Smoking hookah can spread infectious disease. And then theme 4, harm, water pipe harm compared to cigarette. Hookah smokers inhale about 100 times more smoke than cigarette smokers. And we rely on the message framework in our design. And this framework rely on 5 steps or 5 stages where the health warning label can change the perception of those who are exposed. The first step is the attention and recall to the label. So basically this is like, should be a very good and interesting design, nice color, grabbing attention colors. And the second one is the reaction to the label. So what emotions the label will create among those who are exposed. Is it fear? Is it disgust? Is it nothing? And based on this reaction, we can say, okay, this label is really strong in terms of effectiveness or not. The third step is how this label will impact participant or people perception, like harm perception or addictiveness perception to the tobacco product. And the fourth is how it will change their intention, either intention to use water pipe for non-users or intention to quit water pipe among those who are using water pipe now. And we hypothesize like maybe ultimately we hope that this exposure to the health warning label will lead to change in behavior, like actual smoking cessation. And this one is just to show you from where did we start. As you can see, we tried different color. We tried a yellow background with black font. We tried black background with white font. And we even tried the vertical direction for the label versus the, versus the horizontal. Just trying to explore like what are options and which one look better. And as a group, we met several times and we discussed this design elements to decide on the final design, which presented the big picture on the right side in the corner, in the right corner. And also in terms of the language, so we're working within Arabic, English, and even in the Arabic like language in Tunisia, they use different terms than Lebanon. So we tried our best to change according to the local language. So for example, for Lebanon, we used argile, and for Tunisia, we used shisha instead of argile. And this is all, I want to acknowledge our graphic designer, Dr. Michael Schmidt, who did all this work for us. And this is basically, he taught us about the triangular arrangement where you should consider the eye movement when you design the label, where the people will start, for example, in the text, then their eye will move to the image. So this is the first 24 labels that we developed based on the first step. So the next step in our, the next step was to conduct a Delphi study. We wanted to gain input from experts in the field of water pipe smoking and tobacco control regulation, and health warning label, research, just to have a better results. So we did a Delphi study, 3 rounds, involved 3 rounds, where we will send the 24 labels and ask experts about their opinion in terms of their effectiveness. And of course, we followed also the same conceptual framework for the message impact, where we evaluated the labels in terms of intention, reaction, intention, and overall effectiveness. And based on the 3 rounds, we selected the top 12 labels, the one that had that was highlighted, that is are highlighted in red here. So those 12 labels were improved based on feedback from the expert, and then were used in the second phase, where we tried to adapt this health warning labels to the target population. And to do that, as I mentioned before, we did focus group in the 2 countries. And the focus group study started with a PowerPoint presentation to just create this common knowledge among participants to facilitate the discussion. And then we showed them each label in each team, and we discussed them also on several communication outcomes. As part of this focus group study, we did also, before the discussion, a brief survey of individual ranking and rating. And this was important because we wanted to elect for our second phase, which is the lab study, because we needed to identify the top label in each team to use it in the lab study. This is the focus group qualitative analysis. And this is an example like what we were looking for. So we looked for differences by gender, men versus women. This is very important because we wanted our health warning label to be effective among both men and women. We also included in the focus group waterpipe smokers and non-smokers because we wanted this labels again to be effective among everyone. And we have an evaluation for the image alone, for the text alone, and then an evaluation for the text with the image together. And we published 2 papers related to this study. And I will leave this to my colleague, Dr. Nakash, who will talk about this in more depth in her presentation. The step 2 was the lab study. And the lab study was supposed to be in person, but just because of COVID-19, we ended up doing this study online. And in this study, participants were exposed to 3 conditions. The first condition is the health warning label on the pictorial health warning labels on the tobacco. The second condition is the pictorial health warning labels on the 3 elements, device, tobacco, and charcoal. And the control condition was the local Lebanese current textual health warning labels on the waterpipe tobacco. And our theory was that the pictorial will be more effective than the text only, and that the pictorials on the 3 elements will be more effective than the on tobacco only. The results, we were able to prove the first concept, which is the pictorial is more effective than text only, but we couldn't have effective results for tobacco versus all. And I think the main reason for that was the online nature of the study, where participants were exposed to a picture. So the reaction for basically it's picture for the tobacco only and picture for all. So it didn't make a lot of difference in terms of reaction. The third step for us is, and it's going right now, is to conduct a situation analysis of local tobacco control policy environment in Tunisia and Lebanon. And the main aim of this analysis is to guide the future implementation for the policy in these 2 countries. And this analysis includes 2 main parts. The first one is analysis of official documents related to national tobacco control policy to understand policy frameworks and process, organizational structure, and stakeholders involved in tobacco control provision and implementation. And the second part was conducting a semi-structured interviews with key informants, including policy makers, cafe owners, and waterpipe smokers. We just wanted to have feedback from everyone to improve our chances in and success in implementing this policy in the future. And this is a new development and some of the positive effect of our project that we are very proud of it. So our collaborator in Tunisia, Dr. Nadia, Dr. Habiba bin Ramadan, negotiated with the health ministry in Tunisia our project. As part, of course, she was conducting the situation analysis. And that was a good trigger for the health ministry to issue their intention to implement the pictorial health warning labels on their tobacco products. So we are still working on this, and we wish that one day we will be able to implement it in this country as well, in Lebanon. I know I'm leaving most of the Lebanon talk to Dr. Nakash to talk about it. She for sure, she knows way better than me. And as extension, we are doing now the same here in Florida, in the US, and we just actually finished our focus group, and we did it. We did the focus group using Zoom because of COVID-19, and we are just done from analyzing the results, and we are writing the manuscript. And why? I think when we applied to this grant in 2017, 2018, waterpipe smoking was #2 tobacco use methods here in Florida, only after e-cigarette. So it was really increasing. Now it's less, but still it's very high. Now it's #3. And I just want to mention that's just because we did this research during COVID-19, we actually added 2 new themes to our health warning labels. The first theme was about the health risk related to waterpipe health risk related to COVID. And we added this 3 labels, which is hookah smoking, increase the risk of COVID-19 complications and deaths. And hookah smoking and sharing can spread COVID-19, and actually spread. It might seems like an exaggeration, but believe me, I was here in my neighborhood in a restaurant, and there during COVID, a little bit after COVID, and there were some customers using and sharing waterpipe in front of me. So we thought that okay, we should address this problem. And the 6th themes that we add also is aiming or targeted to promote more waterpipe smoking cessation, especially among pregnant women. So we have this new label, smoking during pregnancy can harm your baby, time to quit hookah. I mentioned this, so now we started the same journey, but with electronic cigarette here in the US. You know, it's now #1, especially among youth and young people. So it's very important to communicate the risk. And we just published in Tobacco Control an umbrella review, which is a review of previous systematic reviews to identify the strong evidence about the health effect of electronic cigarette. And of course, based on this evidence, we started developing our health warning labels for electronic cigarette. And a new direction to our group actually, and was triggered by some of our results from the focus group in Lebanon, where participants were interested more in stories, telling type warning. So we are starting on working on developing videos for instead of the warning labels, to use it in social media in the future for both waterpipe and for electronic cigarette. Thank you very much. I hope I'm still within the time. And I just want to add, this is the link for our group. We have a lot of resources for research, for policy implementation, for even collaboration. We are very open for collaboration. If any of the attendees is interested in testing these labels in their countries, we have a graphic health designer. We can change the language. We can change the, the picture, and we are very open for collaboration. Thank you very much.
Thank you again, Dr. Usfad, and thank you for presenting this this morning here in Florida, despite the hurricane that's coming in. Again, this is really exciting to see the progress in this field, and not only the contributions to waterpipe tobacco research specifically, but also the contribution that this research has made in terms of the rigorous methods that have been used to arrive at these tailored health warnings. We have time for perhaps 1 or 2 questions where we have about 2 to 3 minutes. It looks like we might have a question coming in. So from Rima Khalil, congratulating Dr. Usfad on your great work. The question is, did you look into displaying visual warnings on the plastic disposable mouthpieces outer package, which is definitely only handled by the waterpipe smoker himself or herself, even when sharing the waterpipe device?
Thank you. Yeah, excellent question. So actually, we are considering the device on the glass will be the best placement for the health warning labels because their effectiveness is very much depending on their visibility. If we put it on the mouse, it will be very small. So if they are on the mouthpiece, so basically only user or this one who's smoking will see the labels, but others around him will not see it. So we need to think about visibility, like where we can really put a large size label. Again, now all the direction is to increase the size of the label. For example, from 30 to 70%, like in Canada and Australia. It's a very important design element for effective health warning labels.
Thank you, Dr. Usfad. And I see that there's a hand raised from Dr. Ijlal. I'm not sure if you can type your question in, or I don't know if our organizers are able to allow questions verbally.
Yes, we have given them the privilege to unmute themselves. So Dr. Ijlal, if you'd like to unmute and ask your question.
Seems that Dr. Ijlal is still muted. We can perhaps take the question again if the technology cooperates after Dr. Naqash's presentation, as it will be on the same topic or related topic. So I'll go ahead in the interest of time and introduce Dr. Naqash, and then perhaps take Dr. Ijlal's questions and other questions on this topic. And Dr. Ijlal, if the audio is not cooperating, you can also type in your question to the Q&A, and we'd be happy to ask a question on your behalf. So our next speaker is Dr. Rimana Ash, and it gives me great pleasure to introduce her as well. Dr. Ash is a professor at the Global and Community Health Department at George Mason University, and before August 2021, she was a tenured associate professor in the Department of Health Promotion and Community Health at the Faculty of Health Sciences at the American University of Beirut. Dr. Naqash is a prevention science expert with areas of expertise in tobacco control, alcohol, and mental health promotion. She has a particular focus on youth and vulnerable populations, in addition to being a leading scholar in tobacco control research, prevention, and policy evaluation. She's also a strong tobacco control advocate internationally. In her previous role, she coordinated the AUB Tobacco Control Research Group, was co-director of the WHO FCTC Waterpipe Tobacco Smoking Knowledge Hub, Associate Director of the Knowledge to Policy Center, and Director of the Public Health Education Office. In partnership with civil society and media, Dr. Naqash had a major role in the passage of the most comprehensive tobacco control law in Lebanon back in 2011. In recognition of these efforts, she was granted in 2013 the International WHO World Tobacco No Tobacco Day Award by Dr. Margaret Chan, the WHO director at the time. In 2018, Dr. Ash also spearheaded a university-wide presidential initiative to transform the American University of Beirut to a tobacco-free university. It is my pleasure to introduce my friend and colleague, Dr. Ash.
Good morning, good afternoon. Thank you, Ramzi, for your introduction. It's great to see all my colleagues, and just to get a little bit emotional, I really wish that we are doing this fourth conference for Waterpipe Tobacco Smoking together in the same room. For those of us who attended the previous conferences, we know how valuable it is to be in person, but we'll do with virtual for now. So I want to thank Dr. Talib Usfad for setting the stage and for the presentation. I've had the pleasure to be part of this power team. As you can see from Dr. Tahrid's presentation, I was leading the component in Lebanon and was involved in the studies, many of the studies that she mentioned, and it's very important to see how the context in Lebanon, how adapting the findings from this research how we can make use of adapting the findings from this research and taking them up to inform policy. And so for the purpose of my presentation, rather than focus on the previous research in more detail, I do invite you to look at the published articles that this team has produced. I will be talking more specifically about the last component, which is the implementation barriers and facilitators to pictorial warning labels on motor-pipe tobacco products, and what we learned from the case study in Lebanon. The research that Dr. Tahrid mentioned can be found in nicotine and tobacco research with regards to the focus groups that we conducted among water-pipe smokers and non-smokers. The findings we came up with regards to what's the reaction of participants towards those warnings, how much they affected their perception of harm, and their recommendations to designing improvements in design, and also some recommendations on how else those could be. So Dr. Talib mentioned towards the end the move towards doing videos. There was also one of the main findings from this focus group discussions in Lebanon that testimonials of depicting real people might also be helpful in influencing perceptions of harm and changing behavior. So this is an example of how you can build on previous studies and inform future research. Part of that research also moved to an extension from the focus group discussion, is to look at specifically pictorial health warnings on different places. So on the box versus on the actual water pipe apparatus versus on the charcoal. So this is a publication from the work of the group that was led, that's published by research students in FIU, Lebanese research students in FIU. And it was findings from a factorial experimental study that placed the water pipes on the device, on the tobacco, on the charcoal, and it aimed to test the effectiveness on the placement and getting feedback from young adult smokers and non-smokers. And the findings from the experimental study have also been published. But with all this research, we end up with a lot of potential evidence-based practices and policies. These programs, the intention of those programs is to generate this evidence. But we find, and if by looking at the actual context, and also as started by Dr. Tahrid when she's looking for policies where health warning labels, pictorial health warning labels were actually implemented in water pipe, we find that many are not in practice and in context level. So those evidence that we generate that are expected to lead to health benefits, often even when we know what needs to be done, it's very hard to get to what needs to be done. And that's part of what implementation science does, is looking at, okay, what are the barriers that are preventing uptake and application and implementation of evidence, and thinking, are there ways, by understanding the barriers, are there ways for us or strategies to test, to improve improve the uptake. So the last component of the work that I led is related to that. What are the implementation barriers and facilitators? And so we have research that has documented the effectiveness of pictorial health warnings. In Lebanon, we have had 17 years of ratifying the WHO framework, followed by a law that required health warning labels on waterpipe tobacco products and on cigarettes, and also pictorial health warning on waterpipe and cigarettes. Through several attempts of passing decrees to get that pictorial warning on cigarettes and specifically on waterpipe, we have not gotten to a positive outcome. And so the aim here is to understand the existing tobacco control policy environment in relation specifically to health warning labels on water pipes and pictorial health warning labels on water pipes, and then try to understand what are the barriers and solutions of its adoption and implementation. As Dr. Usfad mentioned, a component was policy document review, but the main component that we were looking to get information and answers to our research question was from key informant interviews, from policymakers, from smokers, cafe owners, and media and civil society groups. And the idea is, by understanding those gaps, barriers, and opportunities, we are more able to construct and think about what is the roadmap forward to implementation. I'll focus here more on the interviews because in terms, which is a finding by itself, but there are not a lot of tobacco control policy documents related to health warning labels or related to water pipe. The main ones are the decrees that either were accepted or to the decrees that are drafted. And we have knowledge of the decrees that are drafted because as an AUB Tobacco Control Research Group, we contributed to the drafting of the decree with technical advisors that came to the WHO representative office and with the EMRO regional office. So we are well informed about what the decree says, and we inform the decree, and we understand the barriers that have gone through ensuring that this decree doesn't come to realization. So I will focus on the online interviews. That those interviews were conducted online with key informants, policymakers that have participated in tobacco control policy making, journalists and TV, media people that have contributed to reporting on tobacco. We've had also the intention to speak also and interview owners of establishments that serve water pipe. We've had difficulty recruiting water pipe owners of water pipe cafes, but we have decided that we will intensify and try to recruit them more. But however, the results now don't include water pipe cafe owners. And during this interview process, part of the interview process also involved showing examples of those pictorial health warnings on different parts of the water pipe and getting the feedback to them. So there was general questions about the tobacco control policy environment, specifically to Lebanon, if they know about the law, if they know about the pictorial health warning labels that are part of what the law mentions. We asked them about who they think the authorities responsible for overseeing implementation of pictorial health warning labels on the packaging and detailing the labeling measures. We also asked about what types of entities and resources might be needed at a local level. We tailored our questions for policymakers versus media versus civil society groups differently based on what their responsibilities and their understanding of the policy environment could be. And those interviews actually were really very revealing. So this is the diagram, or one example of a diagram that was shown. This health warning label is an outcome of the research program that Dr. Usfad talked about, and we showed that placement, that this health warning in practice, because of the nature of water pipe tobacco smoking, definitely needs to be applied and even regulated, not only to be on the box as we understand, but also on the other accessories that are used or in use while smoking the water pipe, whether it be the bowl or whether it be the charcoal that's used for lighting. And when looking at those specific health warnings, now, now that you've seen those pictorial health warnings, how can we ensure that those health warning labels get implemented across all tobacco products? Who are the various stakeholders in this regard, particularly that, the responsible entities for importing tobacco packages are different than those that are related to the bowl, whether it's this one or another kind, or whether it's related to the charcoal. So it was important to get specific feedback in relation to the different display of the pictorial awareness. In general, the interviewees and the key informants all agreed on who is responsible for the enforcement of pictorial well-known warning labels and what the obstacles were. So there was agreement among those that we interviewed about with regards to the responsibilities. We'll talk entities responsible, and we'll talk about them later. But there were a lot of barriers that were documented, barriers that some of them were aware of and were documented by those stakeholders. And then they had provided some sort of addressed some barriers to implementation and proposed some solutions to implementation. So in terms of barriers, some of the preliminary findings, the thing that we always as researchers echo is that, there are several elements for smoking water pipe that might require regulation. We've talked about the charcoal box, and this is why we've tested health warning labels on the charcoal box. We've talked about the tobacco package, and we've talked about the apparatus. And this was a theme that came across from all the participants in the interviews that we made, that those several elements, the nature of waterpipe tobacco smoking poses this barrier. How can we ensure that? And it's not as simple as when we say, let's impose a health warning label on a cigarette box that all looks the same in terms of size and the same source of responsible stakeholder across cigarette tobacco products, which is different from across waterpipe tobacco products. The other documented finding as a barrier was that the multiple locations, so the home versus the restaurant versus delivery services, which are common in Lebanon, how can you ensure health warning labels on all those products? Many of ones that are not systematic across in shape and size, and on source. And that was something that they saw as a barrier to be able to get to having those pictorial warnings. Another is the source, multiple sources of the products. So these products in a market that's unregulated allows the sale of tobacco products almost anywhere, them being in supermarkets, being in tobacco shops, being in small grocery stores. These multiple sources make it very hard excuse me, for implementation. And inevitably, the source, a barrier being corruption within and rule of law, lack of rule of law and corruption, allowing some sellers or some providers of these products room for not implementing a policy of health warning, as well as pushback from restaurant owners. And that was not a surprising finding for us, because we did sense that kind of pushback when we were trying to interview various restaurant owners, as well as resistance from Regi, the monopoly body within in Lebanon that is responsible for importing of tobacco products, has a role and will have a role in limiting the placement of pictorial warning labels or in blocking the regulation of pictorial warning labels. And so the Regi was mentioned as a barrier in terms of resisting such a policy. Just two quotations that I wanted to share with you that reflect this is one from a civil society group who says, you're not going to shop and taking the decision to buy a pack and see that in your hand and opening it like a box of cigarettes. So again, the comparison between cigarettes, cigarillos, and cigars. Here you're talking about going to a restaurant, asking for a water pipe, and there's no packaging on it. How do you implement it? And then another from a tobacco control advocate saying that 90% of those who smoke don't see the box or label, and because they're either doing it through the home deliveries or the other or at home. So it's important, say, in a restaurant or somewhere in their house, and that probably prepare it and do it for them. So the issue of visualizing the box, the health warnings on the box becomes problematic. Excuse me. So yes, we want to know the barriers, and then many of us who are health warning label researchers and who understand water pipe and the nature of water pipe tobacco smoking have said this. Now, I mean, now it's documented from stakeholders and policymakers, but we've said this, and the barriers have been slowly, unfolding, and we understand the context and the barriers that come. But what about solutions? Because that's what we want to know, and we want to see when we're talking about understanding implementation barriers, that, how do you overcome those barriers? So some of the facilitators that were thought could potentially support moving forward in implementing on water pipes Victoria health warnings is the collaboration among various stakeholders. The main identified barrier was that each ministry has its own viewpoint about the topic, and they don't collaborate over finding a solution. In Lebanon, in practice, although as I mentioned there was a decree in place, one major barrier was the no collaboration or direct discussion between the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Health. And that's because the way that the law was set requires the Ministry of Finance to approve a decree of pictorial health warnings for both cigarettes and tobacco. So we see that facilitating this collaboration might be a solution to move forward pictorial health warnings. Of course, now what's the strategy to initiate and nurture this collaboration? That's another thing. But one suggestion is that this is something that needs to be approved. And then, excuse me, ideas provided by participants also was what needs to be done across tobacco products. So understanding more the water pipe device, what is the source of the water pipe device? Do you actually need to require that the water pipe device that is imported into the country have pictorial warnings on it? Ensure that restaurant owners have bought into this, and that they ensure that warning labels are put on the bowls that they use. How will it also be put? Is understanding that further will encourage stakeholders that are responsible for implementing it to actually do it. And then the need for more resources. So at the level of the Ministry of Public Health, in the context of Lebanon, we're talking the need to have funds that support pictorial health warning implementation, need to have more people and groups that monitor implementation of pictorial health warnings in the cases where that is reached, and then other sources to support and create readiness among the population and among stakeholders, create awareness, to inform a campaign of applying pictorial health warnings. So again, we see that those facilitators are facilitators that require a lot of resources, human resources and financial resources, to be able to implement, to move forward pictorial health warning labels based on the input from our interviewees, from our stakeholders that we interviewed. And just important to mention that the main comment about collaboration between the Ministries of Health, the Ministries of Interior, Tourism, and Finance was actually from the Ministries of Finance representatives. So we were able to interview a representative from the Ministry of Finance who actually has the inside inside story about the Ministries of Finance positions with regards to pictorial health warnings, and his suggestion was that collaboration across those ministries would be valuable to move forward what we're proposing. So, in conclusion, in terms of tobacco control and supporting adoption of pictorial health warnings on waterpipe tobacco products, yes, there's a need to understand the policy context. This is just an example of how the policy and what the barriers are in Lebanon, and what comes up in terms of specific to the context. So maybe the example of lack of rule of law or corruption is a finding that might not apply in a different context, but it's important specifically for implementation, and for implementation and to think about implementation strategies, it's important to understand the specific context in each country. Implementing pictorial health warnings on waterpipe tobacco products requires this understanding of the policy environment and the context. And because of the complex nature of waterpipe smoking, which we keep bringing up when we talk about applying health warning labels on waterpipe tobacco products, it's important to move one step more and get to a point where, okay, now we understand the barriers and facilitators to that specific context. What are potential strategies that we can test and test their effectiveness to see how we can move to the next step of implementation and enforcement of those health warning labels, pictorial health warning labels on waterpipe tobacco products. So I will end my presentation here. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ash. We have a few minutes for questions. I see there was a request in the earlier session for Dr. Usfad to share the review that she mentioned on electronic cigarettes, and there's been a link now added in the Q&A for that.
So I sent the link to the article, but I'm happy to share I think it's still not available. I'm happy to share the full PDF, the full article. If you send me an email, or I don't know how to share it actually by Zoom. I'm not sure if I can share the PDF by Zoom.
Thank you. So please type your questions in for Dr. Naash, or if you have any questions also for Dr. Usfad. I see that Dr. Shank has her hand up.
Yes, so my question is about the expense of pictorial warnings versus other warnings. So a text warning would be cheaper to print, right, than the pictorial warnings. Is that a big issue? And has there been additional funding put forward for that? Or what do policymakers think about this? Or is it just a non-issue?
Yes, thanks, Catherine, for this. So the first step is the cost of, globally, the cost of printing text and pictorial health warnings is on the industry itself. And so this is where globally pictorial health warnings have been implemented. The cost is on the producer. And this is why we say that we are able to provide free, from our side, free educational messages, communication messages on the about tobacco use, and that are actually on the responsibility of the producer. And that's what the policies require. In terms of pictorial health warnings, that's an interesting question, because that is something that could be taken up and as an argument, and has been taken up as an argument by the tobacco industry. However, we know that they put a lot of money into designing and branding and rebranding their products. So it is not a matter of resources. If a policy, as if a tobacco control policy, requires pictorial health warnings on tobacco packages, the weight of the expense should go to the industry, and the industry should take it up.
Okay, thank you.
We have a question from Dr. Larissa. Please go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Rima. I have a very hypothetical question. In general, by law, shisha should be only served in shisha cafes, not in restaurants in general. I mean, this is what has been discussed all over the years. Could we also demand from the shisha cafes to have pictorial health warnings on facilities, like at the entrance door, on the walls? Wouldn't that also have a positive impact on tobacco control?
Yes, thank you for that question. And in fact, I don't know if you remember, Ramzi, we worked on testing pictorial health warnings also on the menus within restaurants. So yes, this is something that is potentially applicable. We need to test its effectiveness. And in a context, depending on the policy context, so again, that goes depending on in a context where rule of law actually persists, exists in terms of applying a policy. If that is put as part of a policy and has been shown to be effective, there is no reason why this cannot be implemented. Again, remember that these are restaurants, right, serving a product, and the main income, they are selling this product because they have found commercial value in it. So you need to work around that of how you want to get the acceptance of restaurant owners to put that. But this is something that's not completely unrealizable, I think.
Thank you.
I just want to add something. So there is a lot of research here in the US about point of sale, point of sale prevention programs. And actually, there is a paper for Dr. Erin Sutton, which tested providing some information, health information at the establishment. I think it's very effective because remember the tobacco industry use this place for their promotion, for their advertisement, and it's very important to create maybe a very special counter messages for the tobacco industry at the point of sale, not only for Waterpipe, but for all tobacco products.
We only have 1 minute left if anyone has a last minute question. Otherwise, we'll transition to the second half of our program today.
Okay, thank you, Ramzi. I think we're lucky we were spared the storm, so we were fortunate to have the two of you and Dr. Usfad with us for this morning, in your case, and for afternoon at our end. So
thank you. It was nice to see you.
It's a pleasure, and say hello to us.
A long time.
Yeah, like Rima said, we would have much preferred to see you here with us on campus, but we understand the restrictions in these days. So hopefully the day will come soon and we'll be able to be in one place under one roof in one room. So thank you very much. This has been very informative, and I have to admit that we have come a long way from the times when we didn't have the substantiating data. Now we have the evidence, thanks to the work of people like you, have contributed positively to the findings and to substantiate. And even Larissa question, I think these points on trying to, as much as we can promote the health warnings, be it on the water pipe itself, on the device itself, on the packages, or in the hallway where the tobacco is being consumed, I think inevitably it will have a positive effect. I think we need to have more and more evidence, but I think the warning labels, the data now is pretty convincing. And I think we need to push for the implementation in our region to the extent possible. So thanks again for your valuable contributions. Next, we move to another important subject on demand reduction, which is taxation. But here I will leave the moderation to my dear friend and partner, Dr. Maya Romani. Maya is an assistant professor of family medicine at the American University of Beirut. Maya has been keen about engaging herself in public health ventures with us for so many years. And currently, she's also directing the Health and Wellness Center at the University and Healthcare Professional Development Center. So this was reflective of her enthusiasm in public health. And also, she has a special interest in family and lifestyle medicine, tobacco cessation. She has a special passion for this and corporate wellness. So she has even last year conducted a workshop on tobacco use cessation. And also there was a pod that focused on Waterpipe. So it's a great pleasure for me to turn over the moderation of the session to Maya. Thank you, Maya, for joining us.
Thank you so much, Dr. Zaatari, for all your efforts in leading tobacco cessation and tobacco taxation efforts in not only in Lebanon, but in the region as well. And thank you everyone for joining us in this last session this afternoon. It gives me a great pleasure to welcome our first speaker for this session, Dr. Ali Shala. Dr. Shala has earned his BS degree in agriculture from the American University of Beirut, AUB, in 2000, and completed his master's degree in tropical agriculture development of the University of Reading, UK, in 2001. He then went on to complete a PhD in applied economics at Imperial College London, UK, in 2008. Dr. Shala worked in consulting in the UK between 2006 and 2009, where he was involved extensively in economics and customer research conducted for a variety of water and wastewater companies and other utility and infrastructures provided in the UK and Europe as well. He joined the Faculty of Agriculture and Food Sciences at AUB as faculty member in 2009, and he is currently an associate professor of applied economics. His main basically research interests lie in areas of agriculture and food economics, health policy, and also non-market and environmental valuation, applied choice analysis, transportation economics, and agrarian political economy. Dr. Shala remains actively engaged in independent economics, consulting for both local and international clients from all sectors, private, public, and voluntary. His research and consulting have yielded several publications in peer-reviewed journals. Dr. Shala will be talking or addressing elasticities of demands of both cigarettes and water pipe, and he will be talking mainly about the case of Lebanon. Welcome on board, Dr. Ali, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Dr. Romani, for this introduction. So I'll share my slides. Second. So I presume now everyone can see my slides. So yeah, today's presentation is about the elasticities of demand of cigarettes and water pipe in Lebanon. This is, of course, part of a broader research in the framework of the consortium, a consortium that has been funded by the IDRC, International Development Research Center, the East Mediterranean Consortium on the Economics of Waterpipe Tobacco Smoking, led by my colleague who has just presented before me, Dr. Rimana Ash, to do research on the economics of mostly waterpipe tobacco smoking in the wider context of smoking in general, cigarettes and waterpipe. Not only in Lebanon, but also in Jordan and Palestine. And unfortunately, we weren't able to conduct research in Egypt, which should have been the fourth very important Eastern Mediterranean country that was supposed to be under our purview for reasons that I shall not dwell on in this presentation. This research has already been published in a paper, in a 2021 paper in tobacco control. So you're invited to view it and read it, if you may, and read also about the results, not only for Lebanon, but also for Jordan and Palestine. And of course, we present, we declare no conflict of interest. So just by way of background, I know I'm sort of preaching to the converted here, but I'm sure that everyone is aware of the issues I'm just going to talk about, but there's no harm in overviewing them before delving into the details and the nitty-gritty of our study. So waterpipe tobacco smoking is a traditional tobacco use method that originated in the Eastern Mediterranean and has had a global resurgence in recent years, most notably in the East Mediterranean region again. The rates in the region are amongst the highest worldwide, coupled with some of the lowest prices of tobacco products among all WHO regions. And of course, tobacco product prices are a very important factor when considering that decreasing affordability is the most effective measure to reduce the uptake of smoking among young people and all demographics, really. So much so that the WHO Framework Convention on Tobacco Control, the FCTC, recommends that the taxation policy be used vigorously to reduce tobacco smoking, tobacco and waterpipe tobacco smoking, and that it should take into account price elasticity of demand in order to reduce consumption and prevalence of tobacco use. So the economics, so effective taxation policies in the rightful view of the WHO FCTC should be mindful of elasticities of demand, which we're going to come to in a minute, in order to understand the implications of taxes that work through their ways through prices of tobacco products and how these will in turn affect demand and consumption of tobacco products. And the FCTC also recommends that all tobacco products should be taxed comparably to avoid substitution between varieties of products, unintended substitutions, of course, and to avoid also other unintended consequences such as illicit trade. On the other hand, the available estimates in the Eastern Mediterranean region of adult demand elasticities for smoking products are poorly understood and often limited to cigarette smoking. I have to say in this regard that Lebanon is sort of relatively better covered in terms of data availability in this regard than the other Eastern Mediterranean countries that we looked at, and yet still, there's a paucity of data on demand elasticities for tobacco products. So our study really is the first to offer such a comprehensive overview and estimation of elasticities of demand for tobacco products, waterpipe and cigarettes as well. So the aim of this, of what I'm going to present, of the studies, is to present recent and comprehensive own and cross-price elasticities of demand for cigarettes and waterpipe tobacco products in Lebanon, and to discuss the implications of these results, the taxation and other fiscal policies aimed at tobacco control in Lebanon and the Eastern Mediterranean. I'm not going to dwell too much on the second point, bearing in mind that this is going to be the subject of another presentation in day 3, to which our colleague and the study team member, Dr. Muhammad Jawad, is going to show how these inputs were fed into his tax simulation tool to forecast the effects of taxes on the demand for various tobacco products in Lebanon and Palestine and Jordan. So in terms of the methods used, the study was based on a large-scale survey that was based on a household questionnaire, within which at the core of which was what we call a volumetric choice experiment. That was the main tool that generated these elasticities, and we're going to talk about it in a minute. So it was a household questionnaire, a very large household questionnaire, at the end of which came this volumetric choice experiment. The data were collected using nationally representative household samples of adults aged 18 or more in Lebanon, but also in Jordan and Palestine. Participants were selected using multi-stage cluster sampling approaches with probability proportional to size random selection methods to guarantee representativeness. And in each country, the sample of households was chosen in 2 stages. First, we selected well-defined geopolitical clusters within each governorate, and then we selected housing units within each cluster. Of course, participants enrolled were from all 8 governorates in Lebanon, and also all the governorates in Jordan and West Bank, Palestine. Of course, all participants were consented according to ethical principles, and we used electronic tablets to administer the survey. The household questionnaire collected all sorts of information on socio-demographic characteristics, but also very detailed data and information on patterns and behaviors governing cigarettes and waterpipe smoking. And it was based in large measure on prior validated surveys. And the questionnaire was, of course, pre-tested using cognitive interviews to ensure the comprehensibility of the survey tool to respondents. The protocols were approved by at AUB, of course, by the IRB office and similar offices, and the partner institutions in Jordan University of Science and Technology and Birzeit University in Jordan and Palestine, respectively. But of course, we're focusing on the Lebanon results here. Now to the core exercise. Why did we choose volumetric choice experiments? Because these are tools that have been developed in marketing research to understand the demand for products in the lack or absence of actual market data. And this is very much the case with tobacco products. If data are available, they are available in very crude fashion, definitely not in individualized in large cross-sectional fashion that enables us to do estimation, econometric estimation of elasticities. And this is the case in all 3 countries. So the discrete choice experiments and their extension, which we are using here, which is volumetric choice experiments, have been developed and tested in marketing research and have proved very reliable to forecast the demand for products for which there's no actual data or improvements on products that are not yet launched in the market. And of course, the fact that these are experimental methods allow us to avoid what we call endogeneity problems that are inherent in actual market data when these are available, through the fact that we are able to randomize attribute levels. And most notably, we are able to randomize price levels to types of products, when these in reality are always very highly correlated in real markets, to make it very difficult to establish elasticities or demand responsiveness to prices without worrying about biased results. By simultaneously offering multiple distinct, what we call volumetric choices, I'm going to show a worked example in a minute, between competing products, these volumetric choice experiments allow for the estimation of a complete set of not only own price elasticities, which are the bread and butter of demand analysis, but also something which is not always very possible in when we are dealing with aggregate market data, also cross-price elasticities, which enable us to look at substitution patterns between, for example, waterpipe products and cigarette products, and between home consumed waterpipe products and cafe consumed waterpipe products, and all the like. So this is a worked example of the volumetric choice experiment we've used. So here, this volumetric choice experiment was based we did a survey of what tobacco products are available in the market and how they are consumed. And in Lebanon and Jordan, with a slight difference in Palestine, these 8 products turned out to summarize more or less how tobacco products are consumed. So we have premium cigarettes and discount cigarettes. We have also home consumed premium and discount Waterpipe tobacco products that are bought in 25-gram packs. Of course, the cigarettes are bought in 20 packs. Of course, we have the non-flavored Waterpipe tobacco products, which is the more traditional type of Waterpipe that we all know in our part of the world, that what we call the Ajami, which is more the preferred option by older generations. The 2 products 3 and 4 are of course flavored Waterpipe tobacco products, which are very fashionable among younger demographics. Waterpipe home delivery, which is very common in Lebanon, but also in the other Eastern Mediterranean countries. And of course, we have Waterpipe, which is Waterpipe smoking, which occurs in cafe, either high-end premium cafe sessions, and we're basing everything on one Waterpipe tobacco smoking session, but also in discount cafes and more shabby kind of popular kinds of cafe smoking sessions. So these are 8-way choices. The prices you see under each were varied across repeated instances of these choice sets. So we presented 8 such choice sets to each respondent, 32 in total, blocked in 4 blocks of 8 choice sets each, because no single respondent can respond to 32 choices. So he received 8 such choice tasks from among the 4 blocks. And these prices you see below these products were varied in each choice task. And they were selected more or less at random according to some experimental techniques from a list of 4 prices for each product. There was the base price, which was typical of what consumers usually pay in the market. And of course, increasing levels hereafter that were increasing at 50% incremental levels. And of course, finally, respondents were required to state at these prices to state how much, if they were to buy tobacco products, how many units they would buy from each. This is an example of how respondents could state their purchasing intentions. They could state 0 quantities of certain products, non-zero quantities of any other products, or they could indeed choose not to buy any of these products, in which case they would fill in 0 for each. I'm going to spare you the details of the analysis. We use, in a nutshell, we used an extension of the of what we call the Poisson model that's used to analyze count data. We extended it to account for excess zeros, or what we call censoring as well. We also accounted for all sorts of socio-demographics and current smoking status. And in the main count model, we counted for not only the response in terms of the response to the response to the own product in terms of own price elasticity, but also to the other competing 7 products. Without further dwelling on this, one model was estimated for each of these products, so eight models in total. With a certain model manipulation, we were able to recover own price elasticities and also cross-price elasticities. The study was completed by a total of 1,680 respondents in Lebanon, 5,284 in the 3 countries in general. The sample was guaranteed a 50% female and a 50% male split. Very large percentage of current general smokers in Lebanon, 70.9%. Lebanon stands out among the Eastern Mediterranean countries in having the highest level of current waterpipe smoking, 40% almost. In terms of age distribution, 2/3 of the respondents were below 45. Almost 45% were full-time employed, and 20% or 21% had high education. Conscious of time, I'm going to skip these descriptive statistics directly to the own price elasticities. This is basically the results of our own price elasticities. In terms of cigarette demand elasticities, the results looked very reasonable, in that the elasticity was higher for premium cigarettes, which tend to be much more expensive, substantially more expensive than discount cigarettes. Minus 1.1 for premium cigarettes compared to minus 0.664 for discount cigarettes, meaning that for premium cigarettes, a 10% increase in the price of a pack would mean an 11% drop in demand, in quantity demanded. While for discount cigarettes, that same price increase would result in only 6.3%, 6.4% drop in demand. And in terms of premium waterpipe tobacco, and in terms of home consumed waterpipe tobacco products, the elasticities we generated were very high, approaching -2, meaning that a price increase, a 1%, a 10% price increase would be met for the premium waterpipe tobacco product consumed at home. A 10% increase in the price of a 250-gram pack would be met by 20%, almost, let's say 19%, 19.5% drop in the demand, and a slightly smaller percentage for a discount waterpipe tobacco smoked at home. We didn't get any significant or interesting results for non-flavored waterpipe tobacco smoking. No doubt this is because of the very low prevalence of this type of smoking. And again, for home delivery and for waterpipe tobacco for waterpipe smoking in cafes, again, the elasticities were much higher than -1, which is which shows very high price sensitivity, meaning again a demand responsiveness which is more than proportional to a price change. So again, a 10% price increase for any of these products would be met by an 18.7% drop in quantity demanded for waterpipe home delivery, or 23% drop in waterpipe smoked at cafe, or a 17% drop in discount waterpipe cafe smoking. So some further insights and discussion. I'm not going to present the cross-price elasticities here. In terms of comparing to previous studies, the price elasticity for premium cigarettes is substantially higher than the one published by the single study we found published on this in this regard, which is Salty et al. In 2015. While the price elasticity of discount cigarettes turned out to be somehow smaller, okay, which says that our results are more or less in line with the results published in the literature around cigarettes, give or take, given the differences in study context. The price elasticity of premium waterpipe was not very different from the one published again in Salty et al., slightly higher, -1.9 compared to -1.4. The cross-price elasticity estimates between waterpipe and cigarettes were close to 0 in our study, which is consistent with Salty et al., which tells us that these two products are experienced pretty much differently. The demand for the two products are distinct, as is shown actually by our data from our household survey, showing that there's little overlap between the smoking of the two products. Cross-price elasticity in general, cross-price elasticities between store-purchased waterpipe tobacco and waterpipe cafe smoking is also weak and inconsistent, which shows again that the two types of consumption or consumer experiences are not close substitutes, that they are a bit distinct, that they cater for somehow different clienteles. The estimates in the study are broadly consistent, therefore, with previous ones, but differences can be attributed to differences in methodology and temporal context, and of course the fact that our data in Lebanon were collected in 2019, summer 2019, at the onset of the economic crisis, when prices of tobacco products started escalating, and when the crisis started to be felt on households' incomes. So in conclusion, this is the first study to offer robust information on the economic relationship between cigarette and waterpipe smoking in the Eastern Mediterranean region, where both products are very highly prevalent. There's strong evidence that raising tobacco taxes could significantly reduce tobacco use in the Eastern Mediterranean region while increasing government revenues, something which I'm going to leave for my colleague, for my teammate, Dr. Mohammed Jawad, to present more evidence on tomorrow. This is a very timely, policy relevant set of data to evaluate the potential effects of taxes on other fiscal and other fiscal tools in the three countries, and of course, Lebanon being the focus today, plus to potentially extrapolate to other countries in the region, not only on tobacco consumption, but also on public revenues, and also on the substitution between cigarettes and waterpipe tobacco products on the price increases affected by either tax increases or simple inflation. And with this, I end my presentation with a list of the references that have been used in this presentation. Thank you very much, and I hope I'm still on time.
Yes, we're left for a few minutes for questions. So if you have any questions, you can write them in the Q&A section, and Dr. Sharat will be happy to answer your questions. So yes, we still have 2 minutes.
Excellent. So I left very little time for cornering questions.
It's fine. We can still answer them later. We'll catch you after the session.
So I'm not going to be off the hook then.
Working in a clinical setting is usually like a bit far from working on taxation and economics, especially if your background is not into like economics. But it's really interesting to see how these results can serve as a strong evidence to develop further policies for tobacco control in the region, in Lebanon and the region, of course.
I mean, yes, of course. And in our work simulating the effects of taxes, we have tried to forecast using very grosso modo models to try and translate demand reduction into actually healthcare benefits. I think, if I'm not mistaken, this is still work in progress. Actually, this is a piece of research that we've submitted to a journal in revised form already. I think on admissions to hospitals, if I'm not mistaken, but I stand corrected. Yeah, but I mean, this is very far from the accuracy with which clinical research can predict the effect of such reductions in consumption. But it remains highly valuable in terms of designing effective policy policy messages. Yes.
So actually, we have two questions. One question from Jordan, from Dr. Larissa. She's asking if you could have any insights on what you have found in Jordan.
Jordan, yes, of course. I mean, all the results have been published in the paper, if you can, and you can view them in the paper, which the title has been shared, and I'm happy to share a PDF copy of it. The prevalence in Jordan is much lower. Obviously, Jordanian consumers are on the much lower economic duress. I'm not saying the economy is doing very well in Jordan, but compared to Lebanon, any economy is doing much better. And we found demand responsiveness to price increases, but nowhere near, especially for waterpipe tobacco products, nowhere near the levels we found in Lebanon. In Lebanon, because the consumption levels are much higher, that means the stakes are higher, and on top of this, the prices are getting higher. The elasticities were way above unity in absolute value. In Jordan, all elasticities, if my memory serves me well, were much lower and measured, if you may. But that's probably a reflection of the fact that the consumption levels are lower, especially among women, and the price levels are much more affordable.
I sent her the link. I got the paper online.
Okay, great.
PDF. So I think I'm seeing that in Jordan, elasticity, as you said, is less. It's like minus 0.7. And we have seen like more elasticity in Palestine. Yeah. So basically, we have two other questions from Dr. Catherine. She's asking, when you ask the price questions, you are assuming these are the purchasers, it seems. And sometimes people that smoke are not the direct purchasers, right? How is that handled in the interpretation of results? And mainly how you can differentiate between purchasers and active consumers.
The purchase, I mean, we screened in the questionnaire, we screened actual smokers. So the questionnaire, no, actually that's, yeah. And the questionnaire was a household questionnaire in which the volumetric choice experiment was only administered to current smokers. So the assumption we've made is that these purchases are for own consumption, which in retrospect, I have to say, we did not look into the fact whether these purchases were made not only for the person but also for the overall household. I mean, Ramzi is online here. Remind me, Ramzi, whether we specified to consumers in the survey whether these purchases are specifically for them or whether we made it explicit or not.
So good question, excellent question. Anything that happened before COVID, I have very foggy memory of.
Me too. Me too. I was hoping you'd have a better memory than me.
But I believe we did, at least in the choice experiment, specify that this is something that you are purchasing for yourself. And the vast majority of smokers are going to be regular smokers that engage in the survey, and the assumption is that if they are perhaps addicted or regular tobacco users, that they would be familiar with the pricing. There's of course a subset of the population, especially perhaps in youth and young adult, who may not be purchasing the tobacco products themselves, or have older siblings or friends purchasing the tobacco for them, for example, that may not be aware of the prices. But in general, we are assuming that they are familiar with the prices. But that's probably a limitation of our study for a subset of the population.
So she's saying if the tobacco industry in Jordan should not worry that if prices go up, demand is less.
Well, elasticities of -0.6 or -0.7 are still relatively to worry about. Still substantial, I would say. So yeah, maybe not as much as in Lebanon, but I'd still advise them to worry.
Dr. Fatima is saying that she has worked with the Ministry of Finance for years, and they are ready to move for a cigarette tax and change the details, but not for water pipe. So in your opinion, what's missing?
What's missing? That's a good question. Well, I mean, the data already, we have gone a long way to provide evidence in terms of the data. We have done substantial work in trying to simulate how these could be fed into tax regimes. We have We have actually amassed evidence that taxation can be very effective in not only reducing harmful smoking in water pipe, but also generating government revenues. So I think it's high time to delve into this for governments to start and implement taxation on water pipe tobacco products as well as cigarettes.
Thank you,
If
Dr.
I can add my
Yeah, sure. Dr. Ash, go ahead.
to add to hi, Dr. Fatima, miss you. I'd want to add maybe what's missing is not only is more holistic and more systematic. So we need to think about it from a system perspective. Maybe the Ministry of Finance has reached to a point where this whole understanding about cigarette as an issue and about how effects of taxation on cigarettes take place and what is clearer. I think in terms of for water pipe, I think there's still a general overall like misinformation and general overall misunderstanding of the overall policy environment of water pipe. So maybe delving into a new policy related to water pipe that they're not ready yet. So again, that takes us to the issue of implementation. All this accumulated evidence on effectiveness of taxation on water pipe tobacco products. How do we work with it? What do we do with it? And what is next in order to get to a point where what you exactly have mentioned with regards to them being willing to consider it moves to get to that point.
Yeah. So her last question is, in your research, did you touch upon the industry influence into this policy and how this price is influenced by their lobbying? So in other words, how the national monopoly are manipulating this?
I mean, this study has been mostly focused on the demand side, to be honest. We haven't touched upon the industry, on the supply side aspects of tobacco production and the tobacco industry. Which also remains an under-research area, and I think there's a lot of scope for doing more research on this area. But our study was focused more on the demand side, to understand demand for tobacco products and how taxation policies can be used, and other price-based policies can be used to influence harmful consumption.
Yeah, thank you so much. So
you're welcome.
We move next to our colleague, Dr. Ramzi Salloum. Dr. Niveen Aburmaili is having issues with connecting to the internet. So we will update you if we will be having her session after Dr. Salloum's lecture, or we will postpone it or even cancel it. Dr. Salloum, thank you for your lecture, your moderating the session before. So it's our pleasure to have you as a speaker as well in this afternoon. So as Dr. Zaatari mentioned, Dr. Salloum is a PhD. He is an associate professor in the Department of Health Outcomes and Biomedical Informatics at the University of Florida College of Medicine. And he is the director of the Dissemination and Implementation Science Core at the University of Florida Clinical and Translational Science Institute. He received his PhD in economics from Wayne State University and completed his postdoctoral training in public health at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Dr. Salloum specializes in studying the implementation of evidence-based programs and policies in tobacco control and cancer prevention and control as well. His research in tobacco control has been funded by the NIH, the Patient-Centered Outcomes Research Institute, and the Cancer Research in the UK, as well other international centers such as the International Research Development Center at the Florida Department of Health and the Aetna Foundation. He is an author of over 150 peer-reviewed publications, of course, the majority of which have been in tobacco control. His work, he is also active in considering the economic implications of the dissemination and implementation of the tobacco control and also other cancer prevention interventions. Over the past decade, he has led an active research program in tobacco control in the US and global settings with a special emphasis on the Eastern Mediterranean region, In particular, he has co-led a 4-country project in the region to develop the evidence on the economics of waterpipe tobacco control and investigate the dissemination and implementation of policy solutions. Currently, Dr. Salloum serves as co-chair of the Society for Research on Nicotine and Tobacco, a global research network. He's also the immediate past chair of the Global Cancer Research Special Interest Group with the American Society of Preventive Oncology, also an expert panel member of the American Academy of Pediatrics Tobacco Consortium, and a member of the State of Florida Cancer Control and Research Advisory Council. In the coming 30 minutes, Dr. Salloum will address us and he will be talking about taxation of waterpipe tobacco products in the Eastern Mediterranean region. Thank you, Ramzi.
Thank you, Dr. Romani, for this this nice introduction and long introduction. This is actually this is actually much of this work is obviously credit to many on the call today, and as a team effort. And I asked Dr. Shalat to not go very far, as we'll probably rely on him for answering. Especially if there are technical questions that come up. And as well as Dr. Ash. So this is, so my talk will be primarily conceptual. I'll take a step back from what Dr. Shalat presented about our work. And this is gonna be about the same work that Dr. Shalat described, although this will be a little bit sort of more watered down version of the economics piece of this. So again, it's my pleasure to be here and represent the University of Florida. I'm also a research affiliate with the American University of Beirut Faculty of Health Sciences, and have been collaborating with Dr. Ash and the team there for the past 10 years. So really, I want to take a step back and talk about why we're doing or we've been doing this work around taxation of waterpipe tobacco smoking, and then lead us to the project that we just concluded and had Dr. Shalat talk to us about one of the important work that he's led in one of the aims of this project. So if we take a step back into sort of economics 101, and we think about why we tax tobacco. So tobacco consumption imposes direct costs on society and the economy, leading to reduction in existing resources. There are direct healthcare costs that are substantial associated with the consequences of tobacco use, and also there are non-health care costs that patients face as a result of tobacco use, whether they are victims of using tobacco themselves or secondhand, or they have been exposed to tobacco use as secondhand smokers. So these direct non-healthcare costs can include transportation to the clinic, time that family members have to take off from work, from being productive to provide care for a patient. And then there are indirect costs that also result from tobacco use. These are in the form of a reduction in potential resources. So these are the lost productivity from a patient who smokes and is now has a tobacco-related disease that they're suffering from. And so as a result, there's lost productivity on the economy. And also when, unfortunately, we see premature mortality, that from someone who is productive in the economic sense here of society is also something that we attribute back to tobacco use. So in economics and sort of Econ 101, we call these things external costs because these are costs that the consumer, even though there's a cost directly attributed to the consumer, there are costs in tobacco use that go beyond the consumer. So we talked about secondhand smoke as an example of costs that go above and beyond the costs that the consumer of tobacco is burdened with. These are costs to society, and so the medical costs oftentimes of treating tobacco use and the consequences of tobacco use are also things that society has to share the cost of. And so we talk about costs paid by tobacco users and their families as indirect costs. And then we also consider costs that are internal, that result from the information failures that can be thought of as external costs. So, again, in many instances, there's a lack of information for people who use tobacco. There's a lack of education, and these end up resulting in costs. Had the patients been had the proper information ahead of time, maybe perhaps we would have different results in terms of tobacco use. So costs go beyond just the direct costs that we see every day, let's say in our clinical settings as a result of tobacco use. Worldwide, these are now estimates that are 10 years old, but back then it was estimated at $1.4 trillion, approximately 2% of the world's annual gross domestic product. This is the economic cost of smoking. Of those costs, $422 billion were attributable to direct healthcare costs, and the direct healthcare costs were actually much higher than the direct costs. The concept of tobacco taxation goes back several centuries. And so this is not a new concept. Adam Smith, who is considered the father of modern economics, talks about this in his landmark book, The Wealth of Nations, back in 1776. And so tobacco is included in this category of products that are not considered necessities in life, that have become very popular over time. And are fair game, let's say, in terms of taxation. So why do we tax tobacco? It's an efficient revenue generating scheme. We saw Dr. Shala talk about the elasticity of tobacco and the fact that tobacco products are perhaps somewhat elastic, but not very elastic in terms of the demand. And by elasticity, we mean the consumer's response to a change in price. And so from a government's perspective, this is what is sometimes the primary decision-making point, that we're looking at a way to generate revenues. It's a fairly direct way for generating revenues. And given that consumers who are addicted to tobacco use will likely continue to use tobacco, even if the price goes up, this is a way for governments to generate revenue from taxation. Of course, the reason why we're here today is to promote public health. And so the FCTC talks about demand reduction and taxation being one of the most effective tools in demand reduction. We've seen in the presentation earlier today from Dr. Shala the estimates of price elasticity specifically for waterpipe tobacco. And there was earlier work also done by Dr. Salti about a decade ago, also on the same topic. So waterpipe tobacco is not different from cigarette tobacco in terms of the fact that when we raise prices, we see a reduction in demand and leading to improved public health. This is particularly true when we consider health equity, when we think about those who are most vulnerable in society, the young, the less educated, and low-income populations. We often find that in those subpopulations, we see a higher response to price increases. So especially if we talk about young people and low-income populations, they're going to be more sensitive to changes in prices because their budget is usually smaller. And another sort of more academic reason to tax tobacco is that it covers the external costs that we're talking about. So we talked about externalities being costs that are borne by other members of society on top, above and beyond the costs that are borne by the direct consumer. And so we want to make sure that some of these costs go back and are internalized. And so basically, we want to make sure that these costs, these additional costs, are reflected in the price of tobacco. So when someone is making a decision to buy tobacco, this is sort of a reminder that you're paying a high cost because there are societal costs to tobacco beyond the costs that you're paying as a result of using tobacco products. A few years back, the National Cancer Institute in the United States published a monograph on the economics of tobacco control that's dedicated to this topic, and so this is has been a rich resource. This was in collaboration with the World Health Organization, and so at the time there was very little about non-cigarette tobacco products in terms of the economics. Having said that, there was a blanket statement made about the evidence to date showing that they're significantly increasing the excise tax and price of tobacco products is the single most consistently effective tool for reducing tobacco use. So given the arsenal of tools that we have in public health to combat tobacco control, this is a pretty strong statement to make about the effectiveness of tobacco taxation. Of course, this is not suggesting that this tool should be used alone and without the other tools that we have in hand. So we have a variety even of tobacco taxation schemes that are available to us. So this is much more nuanced than simply raising the price of tobacco. So one way to do that is through sales taxes or value-added taxes in some countries. This is not, of course, not specific to tobacco products, but having higher taxes in general will have an effect on demand reduction in society. There's also custom duties that go into importing raw materials, including tobacco leaf or finished products into the country, and those also contribute to higher prices. And these are also, it could be specific or non-specific to tobacco. And then there are implicit taxes that can be imposed when the government monopolizes production or distribution of tobacco products, as is the case in Lebanon. And then finally, there are specific taxes for tobacco products, or excise taxes that are of most interest to us studying the economics of tobacco control, because they are specific to tobacco products. And within excise taxes, we have both specific and ad valorem excise taxes. So specific excise taxes are weight or volume based, and the advantages to imposing a specific weight or volume-based tax is that it reduces the price gaps across tobacco products. So sometimes the industry uses this as a tactic for recruiting more low-income and perhaps low-education smokers by differentiating prices in products, having a discount brand versus a premium brand. So making some of the brands more affordable for low-income smokers. Another advantage is that it deters tax avoidance. It's also easy to administer. when the tax is specific to the weight or the volume of the tobacco. And it's also means that that government has a stable stream of tax revenue that it can count on based on tobacco consumption. The downside of using a specific tax is inflation erosion, as we're seeing very severely now in Lebanon, and to a lesser extent across the world. Inflation has become now again a major problem, and so the specific amount that's being levied as a result of this tax will become less valuable in real terms over time as the prices of other products in the economy go up. On the other hand, we have the ad valorem scheme, which one of its main benefits is that it adjusts with inflation. So this is value-based. So it's ad valorem would be a percentage of the value of the tobacco product itself. We have basically the advantage of this is that it raises higher taxes on products that are higher priced. So it's more progressive in nature, and perhaps higher income individuals would be paying higher taxes as a result, which also speaks to equity. The problem is that it leads to greater price gaps between higher priced and lower priced tobacco products, which is also an equity problem. And then it incentivizes tax avoidance when there are differential taxes being imposed based on the product. Another scheme that the industry uses is discounts. Is very popular in the United States by providing coupons or by having a sale on tobacco prices where you get one pack free if you buy one or two packs. This is something that can be used to circumvent these policies. If you have a situation where prices are dropping, this also means that tax revenue is dropping for government, and so the government may not have a reliable revenue source as a result. So we started doing this work on, I mentioned earlier, in 2016, we didn't have a lot of work that has been done specifically on waterpipe tobacco and other non-cigarette tobacco products at the time. And then Dr. Muhammad Jawad in 2018 did a review that summarized the evidence on non-cigarette tobacco products. It included the work that we mentioned by Dr. Salti earlier on waterpipe tobacco, the economics of waterpipe tobacco. And what Dr. Jawad and his colleagues found is that there is positive substitutability between cigarette and non-cigarette tobacco products, suggesting that price increases need to be simultaneous and comparable across all tobacco products, which is also what the FCTC recommends. In 2016, we also published a regulatory contextual framework specific to the waterpipe tobacco, not specific to the economics, but there are specific elements here that are applicable to the economics. And this was with my colleagues as well. Dr. Usfad was on the call, and Dr. Mzayek. And so again, the main takeaway from this conceptual framework is that waterpipe tobacco is very complex, and we have the cafe setting, we have the home consumption, and we have the non-standardization of the product that make it very tricky to study the economics and study the taxation and really understand the relationship between pricing of the product and the consumption. So all of this preliminary work led us to a project that Dr. Shalat talked to us about. This was a consortium that was funded by CRUK and IDRC. It included colleagues from the American University of Beirut, as well as Jordan University of Science and Technology, JUST, Birzeit University, and Ain Shams University in Egypt. The focus here was on the economics of water pipe tobacco. We had several key products that have come out of this product over the past 4 years, and we're very proud of the work that has been done, specifically characterizing the price elasticity of demand. We saw Dr. Shalat present details of the paper that was just shared. This was published in Tobacco Control on characterizing the own price and cross price elasticities of demand for both cigarette and water pipe tobacco in the Eastern Mediterranean countries, namely Lebanon, Jordan, and Palestine. We also had a follow-up study that was focused on gender differences in the price elasticity using the same data. And this was led by Dr. Samira Awauda at Birzeit University and Dr. Naveen Abu-Rmaili. Very important work, also an important contribution in terms of thinking about the equity implications of tobacco taxation. And of course, this work, the fundamental building block for this work is a household survey that was done in those 3 countries. We have also the findings from that paper published now with Dr. Rimana Ash as lead author on that paper. This is, I'm particularly proud of that paper because we have filled an important gap in terms of knowledge in terms of the prevalence of tobacco use, both cigarette and water pipe in those countries, which is also foundational to this work. Given that we don't have very good surveillance in these countries to characterize tobacco use, this is something that is useful and should be used in future work and build upon it. So this was again presented by Dr. Ali. I'm not going to dwell over it, but basically, to no surprise, we found that the demand for water pipe tobacco is elastic, is price elastic. And actually in Lebanon, where the prevalence of both cigarette smoking and water pipe tobacco was highest across the 3 countries and alarmingly very high, probably a record high worldwide in many aspects. We saw that, in fact, water pipe tobacco was very elastic, meaning that consumers are more sensitive to increases in the price of water pipe tobacco, especially when we compare that to cigarette tobacco prices and elasticity. We still saw significant price elasticity, significant responses to prices in Jordan across the different water pipe tobacco, and to a lesser extent in Palestine, where the prevalence of tobacco use and especially water pipe tobacco, and especially when we look at differences between men and women, was relatively less than Lebanon and Jordan, although alarmingly still very high for global standards. And then we look at the cross price elasticity, which is basically the relationship between consumption of water pipe and cigarettes, and then the price of the other product. And this tells us whether the 2 products are consumed together or consumed as substitutes. So we actually found that there isn't a large effect of substitutability between cigarettes and water pipe tobacco. And this was somewhat surprising, although if you're familiar with the context, you are probably, like Dr. Rumani, who treats tobacco users, she's probably seen in her clinic that oftentimes there isn't a lot of dual use between cigarette and water pipe tobacco. The average patient is either a cigarette smoking or a water pipe tobacco smoker. So it's really, it seems to be 2 different populations on average. So also Dr. Shalat mentioned the work that is being led by Dr. Jawad, who will be presenting tomorrow. Really important foundational work when it comes to waterpipe tobacco smoking. So this is another aim of our project led by Dr. Jawad and also Dr. Shalat, looking at simulation modeling of different tax schemes. So here, what's really important is capturing the context in each country, capturing the taxation schemes, and then we had data to contribute from this project in terms of the prevalence and to be able to estimate consumption in each country. So I don't want to steal the thunder from this presentation that will be given by Dr. Jawad tomorrow, but really foundational work and that we're really proud of as well. In addition to this work, the Knowledge to Policy Center and Dr. led on this project by Dr. Ash. Also, we have an aim focused on knowledge translation and engagement of stakeholders. I know there was a question earlier about tobacco industry influence. Even though we haven't done formal modeling of that in this project, we have started the conversation with stakeholders, also powered by findings that we have on the prevalence of tobacco products, specifically water pipe in this case, as well as the knowledge that we have now on price elasticity and also the effects of taxation. This has been really helpful in engaging the relevant stakeholders in each country. So moving forward, we have also recently published a piece in tobacco control that summarizes our experience, and I invite you to check out that paper as well. And this really reflects upon our experience in this project, talking about data, demand, taxes, equity, and health modeling. This paper was led by Dima Tadini, who was previously also a researcher at the American University of Beirut and currently a PhD student at the University of Florida, and of course, in collaboration with our experts and especially Dr. Shala and Dr. Jawad, who have contributed to the economics side of this project. So really we emphasize in this paper, and again, I invite you to check out the details on the data side, recognizing the heterogeneity in consumption of water pipe tobacco, and also the demand, thinking about what we've done with discrete choice experiments on the demand side, as a flexible tool that can be used given the heterogeneity of water pipe tobacco products, and talking about our experience with simulation modeling for taxes and the importance of considering context in that case, and then moving on to equity, where really there needs to be a lot more work on equity in terms of considering gender, but also other equity considerations, including income and how that influences tobacco and the burden of tobacco use. And then finally, the need for more innovative tools, given that we don't have rich data on the epidemiology of water pipe tobacco smoking when we compare that to the wealth of data on cigarette smoking. So being able to model the health consequences of water pipe tobacco and then also the economic consequences requires innovative methods to be used. So I know I've gone over time and I apologize, but I'll stop here and see if there are any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Saloom, for this comprehensive presentation addressing all aspects of taxation. So if you have any questions, we're happy to welcome 1 or 2 questions because we're short on time. So you can type your question in the Q&A section.
And I took more time because I wasn't sure if Dr. Naveen has joined us, but I see that she is here now. So maybe we should
We are so happy to have her on board. So she was able to join now.
So maybe we can transition to Dr. Naveen in the interest of time, and I'm happy to answer questions in the chat.
So please, if you have any question, then type it in the Q&A section, and Dr. Saloom will be happy to answer it by typing the answer or at the end of the session if we still have time. So next, we will be proceeding with Dr. Naveen. Dr. Naveen Abu Rumaili is a full professor of epidemiology and public health at Birzeit University. She obtained her doctoral degree from the University of Glasgow. Dr. Abu Rumaili has led national, international, and of course, national, regional, and international research. She is also a board member of the Global Implementation Society. She is a member of the Eastern Mediterranean Advisory Committee for Health Research and the WHO Eastern Mediterranean Research Ethics Review Committee. Dr. Naveen's research interest is focused mainly on three broad categories: non-communicable disease such as diabetes, cancer, and tobacco smoking in particular, reproductive health, and information systems for health. She is currently building a research team in reproductive health, mainly focusing on implementation research and systematic review approaches. Current reproductive health research includes understanding existing digital reproductive health initiatives and policies, strengthening adolescents' health information system, and validating the WHO tool developed to assess respectful care during childbirth. In addition, tobacco research covers the economy and epidemiology of the different types of tobacco. Currently, Dr. Abu Rumaili is leading a national anti-tobacco campaign targeting Argili smoking. In the coming presentation, she will be talking about gender analysis of the elasticity of tobacco smoking in the three previously mentioned Arab countries, mainly Lebanon, Jordan, and Palestine. Welcome, Dr. Naveen. So we're ready to start your presentation.
Thank you very much, everybody. And I apologize for not being able to join, but finally I managed to. So I'm very pleased to join this meeting. And I'm very proud to see my colleagues setting the stage for my presentation. So thank you very much, Dr. Ali and Dr. Ramzi, for setting the stage. And I will take less time because I will, I think you've already mentioned several steps that I would like to mention. So as Dr. Ramzi mentioned, one of the focus that we wanted to see to look at the analysis is the equity point of view and see how the price elasticity would differ by gender. So let me see how can. As mentioned by my colleague, we're a team coming from 4 countries, actually, Palestine, the West Bank of Palestine, Lebanon, Jordan, and Egypt, in addition to Muhammad from the UK and Ramzi from the US. So we're 4 Arab countries, but we're all Arab working for the benefits of Arabs, hopefully. As we know that in the literature was mentioned that men have higher rates of tobacco smoking compared to women. In the developing countries, we have a big gap between the prevalence of smoking between men and women. It's around 10-fold, while in developed countries, the gap is less. It's around twice. And we know that increasing tobacco price by imposing higher tobacco excess taxes is among the most effectively policy tools to reduce the prevalence of tobacco. But as mentioned by my colleague, who is more affected by these taxation? So this is why we started our analysis with the aim to assess the extent to which the elasticity of cigarette and waterpipe tobacco product differ between men and women. And then we wanted to see whether we have substitution and complementary in tobacco products among men and women. So these 2 questions were very essential for us to understand before advising policymakers. We wanted to understand who will be mostly affected by the change of price or increasing price. As mentioned by my colleagues, we have data, nationally representative surveys that were conducted in Lebanon, Jordan, and the West Bank in Palestine during summer 2019. Eligible respondents included male and female adults residing in each country regardless of their nationality. And this was essential for us to estimate the prevalence, as mentioned as it was unknown or it was fragmented information available. The survey assessed the use of two main varieties of cigarettes, premium and discount cigarettes, and 5 varieties of water pipe tobacco: the premium, discount, home delivered water pipe, premium and discount water pipe tobacco cafes. We also used questionnaire, included the volumetric choice experiment, as explained by my colleague Ali, that modeled 8 scenarios of different tobacco products with varying price in each scenario. So the respondents were asked to indicate the amount of tobacco, cigarettes, or water pipe they were willing to consume under each scenario. And the respondent could choose to consume any possible combination of tobacco products within each scenario. We have some exceptions, some variation in the different countries. For example, in Jordan, in Lebanon, we had included the unflavored water pipe, while in Palestine, we used the roll your cigarettes. And these exceptions were not included in the main analysis. So we focused on the main groups that I've mentioned earlier. To simplify the results, because the paper is very detailed and it has lots of information, the one that was published, but to give a general main results, I will present the results by country. So in Lebanon, the one price elasticity, the demand for water pipe product was elastic, more than 1, for both men and women, as compared with cigarettes. Elasticities were the highest for premium cafe sessions and premium water pipe tobacco. And the price for price elasticity was higher for women compared to men for discount cigarettes, premium water pipe, delivered water pipe, premium cafe, and discount cafe. In Jordan, women had higher elasticities as compared for men, and the price elasticity for women was high for discount water pipe and premium cigarettes. In the West Bank, the price elasticity of premium cigarettes for women was 2.26 as compared with 1 for men. The price elasticity of home delivered water pipe and premium and discount cafe session were higher for women as compared to men. Palestinian women had the highest price elasticity of premium cigarettes as compared with Lebanon and Jordan. So as was summarized by Dr. Ramsey earlier. For cross price elasticity, and we were looking for different substitutes. In Lebanon, the substitutes were for discount cigarettes and premium cigarettes, premium water pipe and discount water pipe, premium water pipe and discount cafe, premium water pipe and discount cigarettes. And the cross elasticity were slightly higher for women compared to men. In Jordan, the discount cigarettes and premium cigarettes were substitutes for men only. Premium water pipe and discount water pipe for both were substitutes for men and women. In the West Bank, as mentioned earlier, discount cafe and home delivered water pipe were the only significant substitute mentioned, found in Palestine, in the West Bank. So in summary, we have these variations. So women were more responsive to changes in the price of tobacco products. The degree of responsiveness to changes in tobacco prices varied across the 3 countries, as mentioned earlier. The degree of responsiveness to change in price was higher for water pipe products as compared with cigarettes. And finally, the cross-price elasticities in the 3 countries indicated some substitution between cigarette and water products and within each product variety. I hope I have summarized it in a very simple way, but informative way. And I will thank everybody, and I apologize again for being late. And hopefully I have managed to stay on time.
Perfectly on time. It's 6:51, so we're left with 10 minutes for Q&As. And it's really our pleasure and honor to have you with us. So,
thank you very much. And I think the Q&As we can respond, myself and Ramzi and Ali, to the questions, since we are forming this consortium.
Yes, sure. So I'll start with the question of Dr. Fatima. Fatima is mentioning that we have not seen this in our surveys, but she's addressing Dr. Saloom. But if it's coming from multiple sources, maybe we need a meeting following this meeting to discuss how surveys can build on that. Dr. Saloom?
Yeah, I can start, and maybe others want to jump in. But yes, I can. I certainly agree with that. This is only really scratching the surface of this work, and we need. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. We talked about that in our commentary in tobacco control recently. But this was really demonstrating the utility of increasing the price of waterpipe tobacco for public health, but we didn't get into the specifics of the different tax schemes and also the nuances that we see in across different countries. This was, I want to emphasize, this was the experience of 3 countries and 3 countries only. There was another question by Dr. Fatima also about the use patterns that we saw in these countries. These are also specific to those countries. If we're looking at other countries, there may be more of a dual use phenomenon going on, but we didn't see that in Lebanon, Jordan, and Palestine for the most part. So definitely this research needs to be replicated, and our results need to be examined in other contexts. And assuming there were major changes that we saw as a result of COVID and also the financial crisis in Lebanon and the region, that could also influence the validity of these results over time.
So Dr. Catherine is mentioning some comments. So just a comment that it was helpful to see Ramzi's presentation's message of the effectiveness of taxation based on empirical research, and the simulation models are interesting if based on past experience of taxation results, but like all predictive models will have some inherent uncertainty if the effects of taxation depend on any other changing contextual variables, such as different countries or time periods. So do you want to comment on that, or we'll keep it for Dr. Jawad tomorrow to address this?
I think we should keep it for Dr. Jawad to address this tomorrow, but I can say that all models are wrong, but some of them are useful. And in this case, I think Dr. Jawad came up with a really useful model and really got us to start thinking about the nuances that come with studying waterpipe tobacco in this context.
Yes, so we are so excited for your presentation, Dr. Jawad. Mrs. Khalil is commenting, she's thanking you for clarifying lots of issues around taxations and reasons why taxation should be also proportional to cost of smoking. And she's mentioning that among most hidden costs of smoking, you mentioned in your introduction, loss of productivity in the work setting also as a result of absenteeism, multiple breaks, and addiction side effects, and most of all cost of maintenance and cleaning, of course, from the actual behavior of smoking. Any questions? Would you like to comment?
Yeah, I just want to say, also mention or credit Dr. Romani and Dr. Naash also for a new study that we will be launching here with the American University of Beirut on that will be an implementation trial on tobacco cessation in Lebanon. And we also have a cost effectiveness aim that is related to this question. So we're very excited to learn more We'll indirectly learn about the effects of changes in prices as we start seeing patients, and but also we're going to be learning for the first time about the cost effectiveness of implementing tobacco treatment guidelines, which are also endorsed by the FCTC in Article 14 for demand reduction, and learning about the cost effectiveness specifically in our region and in Lebanon in particular in this case. So I'm very excited to be conducting this work with Dr. Ash and Dr. Rimana.
Thank you, Ramzi.
I have a question to Naveen. Thank you, Naveen, for joining us at the last hour. I'm glad you made it, and I think I enjoyed listening to your presentation, which fits into the program. Yesterday, in talking about the prevalence, it was interesting that one of the observations that were made is the alarming high percentage of water pipe use among women, and these are smoker groups. Who could very well be dual users, the high percentage among Palestinian women. That was pretty alarming. I mean, the percentage, if I recall correctly, was like 67%. So I'm just listening to you today and also mentioning about the responsiveness of women in the occupied territories to price elasticity, and to what extent this could be a mean to control this. I mean, the figures were yesterday alarming. We didn't have any kind of explanation for it. I don't know if you have any insight on this, whether you were taking part into these surveys. I know the surveys are not well structured, but at least the figures were somewhat alarming.
Thank you very much for mentioning this. Actually, the prevalence of water pipe has increased. And as I mentioned, our survey, the one we conducted in 2019, confirmed the observation that we have noticed and from the different sporadic studies that showed that water pipe smoking among females is increasing in the West Bank. And also our study was confirmed by a recent study that was conducted by the Palestinian Central Bureau of Statistics, confirming similar prevalence. I think just to correct the number, I think it's around 19, the water pipe tobacco smoking, but the 76 is the prevalence within smokers, not the actual prevalence, just to correct.
Yeah, mentioned, right. I mean, it's among smokers. I made this point.
Exactly. So among water pipe smokers, this is the percentages of females, but the prevalence of water pipe tobacco is around 19. The phenomena is increasing. We are catching up, unfortunately, with the trend, and water pipe is an acceptable social phenomena. And we have, as I mentioned, and this is why we are using in our different scenarios, the premium, how available now water pipe and the home delivered water pipe, in addition to the water pipes that is smoked at home. So the different variation and availability and acceptability, unfortunately, of water pipe is supporting the encouraging young, it's not only females, it's young females. But just to highlight that looking at specific distribution, it's mainly in certain places, not across the West Bank. So we are getting this collating number, this large number is a collation of the different parts, but we have the highest smoking prevalence in certain governorates and in certain cities in governorates rather than it's a general idea. So I think we need to do more work and publish more specific information to have a better understanding of where the phenomena is increasing.
Is the price of tobacco products on the low side, or?
Well, I'm not sure if Ali mentioned this, but I missed Ali's presentation. But the prices, the taxation for both water pipe and cigarettes is the highest in the West Bank compared to Lebanon and Jordan. So it is one of the highest prices in the region, because we have to go through different taxation and by different authorities. And the elasticity, as we have mentioned, the main effect is on primary premium and discount water pipe. So we have potential, but it's one of the highest, so we don't know how much we can raise the tax.
Thank you, Naveen. This is helpful.
Dr. Fatima is asking if the 2 latest adult surveys in the region in both Jordan and Palestine are coming with, so she's mentioning that they are coming with shocking numbers, and she's mentioning that Palestine is one of the highest in the region.
Yeah, this is true, Dr. Fatma, and we should work actually collectively and together. And this is one of the things that we started to campaign, and I'm sure that you are aware of, in Jordan and Egypt and Palestine. Hopefully, and in Palestine, it was mainly targeting Argile.
يعطيكم العافية, so much work to do. Okay, so as a wrap up for today's sessions, we came across several interesting topics. Dr. Taghreed and Dr. Ash talked and addressed us about the evidence on developing water pipe health warning labels, and they have found that emotionally provocative health warnings are the most effective, mainly the labels addressing children and infants, with the most perceived health warning labels among oral cancer and mouth disease. And we are looking forward into further research addressing mainly youth, and this will help us, of course, into implementing more tobacco control policies. Then Dr. Shala and Dr. Saloom addressed us with the price elasticity and how it affects demands for actually both cigarettes and water pipe tobacco. We concluded that the demand of water pipe is price elastic, and basically in countries with a high prevalence of water pipe, with also strong evidence that water pipe price is very elastic in terms of demand when comparing it to actual cigarette smoking. As for gender analysis, Dr. Naveen concluded that we have like in some countries such as Palestine, Lebanon, and Jordan, we have like more women are more responsive to changes in the price when compared to men. And Palestinian women had the highest price elasticity of prices when compared to women in Lebanon and in Jordan. Thank you so much for attending today's sessions, and we are looking forward to have you among us for a very rich program tomorrow. Have a great evening, everyone, and for the one who are living in a different time zone, have a great day. Thank you, everyone, for joining.
Thank you, Maya. This is, again, another great day for us on this Congress. We have a lot of new knowledge, information, and thanks for all the speakers for their valuable contributions. And also the discussions, they were very informative, and I think there is more to follow tomorrow. So thanks for the 2 moderators for the day, and we're looking forward to see you tomorrow for day 3, the final day of this Congress. It's going to be the same time on the same channel. So hopefully you can join us. I will remind you that you can obtain a certificate of attendance by filling out a survey or a questionnaire that will be sent to you. And we would value this to you because this is going to be very useful for us to learn about where things went right or wrong with this Congress and how we could plan for future Congresses. So thank you very much and enjoy the day or evening, whatever the case may be to you. So long. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.